Chapter 1605. Touching his bloody mouth where several teeth were knocked out, Tatsumi hated Dustless in his heart. When he just left, Dustless gave him a thumbs up and praised that he was very feminine. But now, damn Dustless, I will settle this account with you when we go back. He turned his head and looked at Oka, who was rushing at him crazily. His face was ferocious, and he couldn't wait to tear himself into pieces. His cheeks were full of muscles, and they were trembling. Tatsumi was frustrated. Damn Dustless. Thinking of Dustless, who fooled him into dressing as a woman, Tatsumi was even angrier. This guy's bad idea really made him suffer. Originally, Tatsumi thought that Oka was a monster, but now it was the opposite. Tatsumi became an important shortcut for Oka to get promoted and make a fortune. Tatsumi chased Tatsumi relentlessly. He would never let him go easily. In Oka's eyes, Tatsumi was like a delicious cake. After all, as long as he caught the members of the night raid, he could successfully offer these people to the minister. In the Empire, Minister Ernest could do whatever he wanted, so he would naturally be promoted. Cough 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 cough. Seeing that Oka was chasing Tatsumi, Dustless had to come out and make his presence known. He said seriously, "My plan succeeded. In fact, my original intention was to let Oka see through Tatsumi's disguise deliberately." Pucci, Scarlet Eye and Leonette, who were on the way, both vomited blood. They secretly scolded Dustless for being shameless. Just now, before the plan was implemented, Dustless didn't say so. "If I remember correctly, your original intention was to let Tatsumi dress up as a girl to seduce Oka, right?" Leonette stared at Dustless speechlessly with an expression of, "You underestimate my IQ." No, Dustless quickly shook his finger and said in a deep voice, "This is just what I meant on the surface. Actually, my real intention is to deliberately expose Taz's disguise so that Oka will be suspicious of him." Although Oka looked very rough on the surface, he was a man who was rough in his heart. Realizing that something was wrong, he would definitely not let Tatsumi go easily. And Tatsumi's performance was also within my expectations. It's his first mission, and he's really scared. Really? Chi Tong looked doubtfully at Dustless's thoughtful face. Soon after, his gaze locked onto Oka, who was chasing after Dustless. He immediately praised, "Chenjun, you are so smart." Cough, cough, cough. Dustless's face turned slightly red. Was that really the case? In fact, this was indeed the case. Dustless intended to use Oka's hand to kill Tatsumi, but this kid's protagonist aura was not a joke. His own strength was not bad, and he was slightly better than Oka, so he temporarily escaped the disaster. "It's almost done." Tatsumi quickly ran to the previously agreed alley. It was dark and silent. There was no one around. There was only Tatsumi, who was desperately escaping, and Oka, who was crazy. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, Tatsumi's footsteps suddenly stopped. He turned his head and stared at Oka with a gloomy face. Moreover, his cold sword was unsheathed. "You broke 7 or 8 of my teeth, and I will pay you back double." At this moment, Tatsumi, who was furious, finally looked like an assassin. He was eager to take revenge, and the tingling in his mouth made him feel ashamed. He couldn't forgive this guy. For a moment, his fear was forgotten. "Yo, good eyesight." Oka glanced at Tatsumi with slight appreciation, and then his eyes emitted a fierce light. "Unfortunately, your opponent is Master Oka." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As his voice faded, Oka's broad blade swept out like a wave, directly attacking Tatsumi's neck, intending to kill him in one strike. Killing the night raid could be promoted. Under such a huge temptation, Oka broke out in unimaginable power. Whoosh 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 whoosh. However, Tatsumi was not a vegetarian. He also practiced swordsmanship for several years. He also swung his sword. Boom boom boom. The two blades collided, and suddenly there was a dull explosion. In the dark void, there was a dazzling flame. That was the light that only belonged to the friction between the two people's swords. In terms of strength, today's Tatsumi was obviously not as strong as Oka, who was stronger than a cow. However, he also had an advantage that Oka couldn't make up for. You lost. Aiming at Oka, whose weaknesses were exposed, Tatsumi's sword was instantly endowed with divinity. It was incredible and difficult to resist at the same time. Puchi. Suddenly, a shocking crack appeared on Oka's abdomen. In terms of strength, I am not as good as you, but in terms of swordsmanship, if you want to catch up with me, you still need a few years. Tatsumi glanced at the corpse behind him coldly and smiled. Suddenly, he felt that today was the happiest and the most wonderful day in his life. At this time, Tatsumi's face was full of excitement. He suddenly realized that there was a raging gaze staring at him, and there was a cold light. He immediately picked up the big sword and put it on his head without hesitation. Boom, boom, boom. A heavy blow like Mount Tai suddenly came, and a thick blade came horizontally, and all the force hit Tatsumi's blade. He was hit by this violent force, and the ground under his feet cracked. Go to hell, little brat. Oka shouted loudly. The big sword in his hand was infinitely close to Tatsumi's head. The blade that Tatsumi used to resist had been suppressed by Oka. Puchi. A dazzling light fell from the sky, and the sharp edge cut through Oka's body and divided him into two. Too embarrassing, Tatsumi. Dustless's gloating voice suddenly sounded, and his eyes were full of ridicule. At this moment, Tatsumi was extremely embarrassed. Just now, he was punched by Oka, and his face was red. Chapter 1606. Oka turned his head with difficulty and saw Wu Chen's frosty face. That disdainful look was obviously like looking at an ant struggling on the verge of death. You are lucky. Glancing at Tatsumi, who was still in shock, he had no choice but to save this kid. If Dustless didn't do it, Akame and Leone would kill Oka. Since Tatsumi would be saved no matter what the result was, Dustless might as well take the initiative to attack, and he could also get a super good reputation of saving companions. It's all your fault. Tatsumi, who was rescued, found that Dustless appeared, and immediately jumped up like a furious lion. He pointed at him and scolded, "It's all your bad idea to let me dress up as a man. Humph. This is because your acting skills are not good enough. You can't even dress up as a woman, let alone be an assassin." Dustless shrugged with an expression of, "You are too weak." What's more, his plain face suddenly became extremely cold. Dustless exuded a chill and said coldly, "You are so rude to your savior, pay attention to your attitude. This guy is so strong." Tatsumi's face immediately changed, and his face was full of fear. If Oka, who was just killed, was a dangerous species, then Dustless was a super dangerous species that was dozens of times stronger than the dangerous species. "Tatsumi, how do you feel?" Akame and Leone asked. "You should be careful in the future. Although your strength is stronger than Oka, it is still impossible to kill him in seconds. If you are as ruthless as Dustless, it is best to split him into pieces." "I understand." Tatsumi nodded and looked at Oka, who was split into two. His intestines were clearly visible, and the smell of blood was pungent. His face was pale, and he resisted the tumbling of his internal organs. If he vomited, it would be too shameful. "Retreat," it is estimated that many people have noticed. Dustless suggested after looking around with his bright eyes. He had already heard the sound of hurried footsteps. "You and Tatsumi go back to the base for the time being. As for the oil merchant who colluded with Oka, Leona and I will deal with him." "Scarlet," I said to Dustless. Swish. Swish. It was also at this moment that a flash of light appeared in the darkness. Dodge. Although Leone and Akame did not understand what it was, they realized the danger and retreated. At the same time, they did not forget to remind Dustless and Tatsumi. Bang bang bang. Dustless took the opportunity and kicked Tatsumi. Boom boom boom. Tatsumi heavily hit the wall, his internal organs trembled fiercely. Tatsumi couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Dustless used too much strength, even the wall behind him was dented. Bastard, why did you suddenly kick me? Tatsumi roared furiously. He was sure that if he hadn't trained, Dustless's kick would have crippled him. Shut up, if it weren't for Dustless, you would have been beaten into a hornet's nest. Scarlet Eye pointed to the place where Tatsumi stood before. It had been pierced and crushed by countless ice dregs, and there were small holes everywhere like a honeycomb. But I am unlucky. Tatsumi snorted and was speechless. He was sure that this was Dustless's deliberate revenge. In fact, when he heard Scarlet Eye and Leona's reminder, Tatsumi was ready to escape. Who knew that right at this time, Dustless kicked him flying with a bang. Even without the help of Dustless, Tatsumi could deal with it. However, Dustless saved him. Tatsumi knew that Dustless was using his position to avenge a private grudge, but he couldn't say anything. This guy is as cunning as a fox. I should stay away from him in the future. Thinking of his miserable deeds in the past few days, Tatsumi decided to avoid Dustless. If he couldn't beat him, he could hide. The ability to use ice. Glancing down at the ice dregs all over the ground, Dustless's pupils shrank slightly. It seems that she came back early. Is this female hungry wolf so thirsty to trouble me? Could it be? Leona and Scarlet Eye were also tense. Both of them heard that the Empire's strongest sadist general would return early, and the ability to control ice seemed to be the only one. Several people's eyes swept into the depths of the darkness at the same time. A young girl in a white uniform with long blue hair came into view. Is death really came early? Scarlet Eye frowned slightly. Realizing that she was in trouble, her right hand had already grasped the hilt. It's hard to imagine that a person like you would refuse my invitation and join an assassination organization, Night Raid. Are they so capable of making you admire them? Death showed a cold face. Her eyes stopped from Scarlet Eye and Leona for a few seconds. Finally, she glanced at Tatsumi and finally fixed her eyes on Dustless. Damn it, I am despised again. Tatsumi's mouth twitched a few times, and he found that it was his turn to be unlucky. Do you know his death? Scarlet Eye and Leona both showed surprised expressions. This sadist general was famous all over the world. Even because of Isthetha's expedition to the alien race, their night raid dared to disturb the imperial capital unscrupulously. She is an enemy. Dustless scratched his head and explained, I defeated her last time. I'm afraid this woman heard that I appeared in the imperial capital, so she killed the alien race in advance to trouble me. Sorry, I got you into trouble, defeated Isthetha? Scarlet Eye and Leona both felt that their brains were not enough to understand the words. They stared at Dustless with their eyes wide open. This was one of the strongest sadist general in the Empire. It could be called the existence of one against 10,000. Chapter 1607. Is this guy so famous? Isn't he a novice like me? How can the Empire's strongest sadist general, Isthetha, know Dustless? Tatsumi's eyes were full of astonishment. He didn't expect Dustless to be familiar with Isthetha, and he heard from Dustless that Isthetha was looking for trouble with him this time. The reason was that Dustless once defeated Isthetha. You defeated the strongest sadist general dash. Scarlet Eye, Leone, and even Tatsumi had the expression of seeing ghosts. Their eyes were full of emptiness, and they were shocked by these words. It's all your fault. What did you do to offend this sadist general dash? Tatsumi's tone suddenly changed. He was so depressed that he vomited blood and scolded, we all have to face the revenge of the sadist general. I heard from Brother Bullet that Isthetha is a living pervert. You said I'm a pervert? Isthetha stared at Tatsumi with raging eyes and said coldly, reckless kid, you'd better pray that you don't fall into my hands one day, otherwise. I will personally let you know what it's like to beg for death. Isthetha's words were quite powerful. Tatsumi immediately shrank his neck and dared not to continue to talk nonsense. Isthetha's aura was too strong. Let alone Tatsumi, even Leone and Scarlet Eye could feel the sense of horror. This woman seemed to be able to kill others with a thought. You all go back, staying here will only drag me down. Dustless waved his hand and stood resolutely in front of Isthetha. Obviously, he wanted to fight with her. Then you be careful, we will retreat temporarily. Without waiting for Scarlet Eye and Leone to speak, Tatsumi spoke in advance, looking at his death with fear in his eyes. He was the weakest among the 4 people. If he was caught, Tatsumi only felt a chill on his back. It's terrible. Thinking of Estetha's previous declaration, Tatsumi had goosebumps. If he was caught by Estetha, he would definitely be tortured by this guy. You want to leave? Estetha snorted and said coolly, there is no doubt that it is difficult for me to deal with this guy, but as for you ordinary people, you still want to leave? Estetha's right hand suddenly fell to the ground. After a crisp snap, the surrounding environment suddenly changed. Ka 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 ka. The dark world was completely covered in a thick layer of ice. The entire alley was isolated from the outside world. The oxygen consumption accelerated, and the danger of suffocation filled the air at any time. It had become an independent small world. Break. Leona gathered her strength and punched the ice wall, but nothing happened. Only a fist mark was left behind. There wasn't even a crack. Clang 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 clang. Scarlet Eye also raised his saber and slashed at the ice wall, but the effect was minimal. Just like Leona, he only left a faint cut mark on the thick layer of ice. As for Tatsumi, whose battle power was only 5, needless to say, it was impossible to count on him. Really? Sure enough, teammates are a hindrance. Dustless sighed helplessly, and then looked at the frozen world. The blazing chakra came out of his mouth, and the boundless sea of fire swept away. Fire release, grand fire annihilation. The dark night sky suddenly turned crimson like blood. A lot of boiling steam came out of the frozen world. Facing this boundless super sea of fire, the ice immediately showed its other side, rapid melting. Amazing. Scarlet Eye and Leona admired him. The sea of fire just came for a moment, the ice wall that was a few meters thick was evaporated, and a big hole of tens of meters appeared. Sure enough. Other people are small characters, only Dustless is the problem. If we don't solve this guy, everything will be in vain. Estetha frowned deeply and immediately relaxed. At this point, Estetha also saw through it quite clearly. Others were small characters, and a little mouse was always a little mouse. As long as they solved their Mouse King, Dustless, all the problems would be solved. You guys retreat, this guy's target is me. Dustless said to Scarlet Eye and others, his voice was very calm. But, Scarlet Eye opened her mouth to refute, but before her voice fell, she was stopped by Dustless. We should be companions, you have to believe me. In this case, Silver could only say his trump card, companions. I believe you. Scarlet Eye nodded like a chicken, and her view of Dustless also changed instantly. For some people, the meaning of this word was very heavy. For some people, the word companion was also as light as a feather. But it happened that Scarlet Eye was a person who had absolute trust in her companions. The simple word companion meant a lot to her. After nodding, she resolutely withdrew. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, not long after they escaped from the frozen alley, a few figures suddenly appeared. Want to run? No way. Estetha's subordinates, the 3 beasts, all locked on Akainu, Leona, and Tatsumi with hatred on their faces. In the past few days, I have strengthened my training and become stronger. This time, I must catch Dustless and tear him into pieces. Nyo, one of the 3 beasts, said with hatred. Leva and Didos looked at each other, and their speechless eyes were extremely tangled. They complained in their hearts, you didn't even touch his body last time, and this time you want to crush him? Don't dream. That's a god, he can even defeat Estetha Sama. Chapter 1608. On the other hand, they were also in a stalemate. You are really haunting me, why are you so obsessed with me? His eyes stared helplessly at Estetha, who was full of fighting intent. Dustless's expression was slightly stiff. He knew that the result was like a moth flying into the flame, and the end of self-destruction, but he still rushed to her without hesitation. What kind of behavior was this? A typical death-seeking. Who knows, Isteth answered perfunctorily. In an instant, a big ice sword appeared in her hand. She stared at Dustless like a torch, then she turned into a flash and rushed to Dustless. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The light that cut through the night sky was very dazzling, like the morning star in the dark. It went straight to Dustless's cheek. Didn't I say that I am your natural enemy? Dustless had a headache. He suddenly felt that Isteth was also a persevering problem child. Kakaka. Dustless did not block. The ice edge was unstoppable. It cut to Dustless's head. However, there was no scene that Isteth expected, but the ice sword with high hardness collapsed instantly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Seeing such a strange situation happening, Isteth quickly opened a distance with Dustless. She was particularly depressed and even speechless. The result was a big blow to her. What kind of taigu does this guy use? He has so many abilities. Isteth slandered in her mind, but her arms were attached to the ground. Kakaka. In an instant, the earth was once again eroded by thick ice. Countless sharp thorns rose from the ground and stabbed to Dustless's eyes. Perhaps Isteth thought that human eyes were the weakest place. No one was an exception. Shinra Tensei. The invisible repulsive force broke out. The attacking ice light turned into nothing in an instant. It turned into crystal fragments in the sky. Like snow, it was blown away by the wind and drifted to the distance. Now you are not my opponent. Glancing at Isteth faintly, Dustless said calmly with no expression. That is not necessarily true. Isteth's face was only filled with excitement. She suddenly felt that her boring life was much more interesting. Her eyes circled around Dustless with a trace of madness. I have one more goal in my life, to tame you and keep you as my pet. The water-blue eyes were full of firmness. Isteth waved her hand lightly, and dense ice barbs were launched. What a crazy idea. Frowning and looking at Isteth, Dustless said indifferently, but, such an unrealistic idea will only make your invincible record more failures. Buzz buzz buzz, under the dark night sky, Dustless's body suddenly emitted a huge radiance, like the sun hanging high in the sky. Swish. Swish. The tip of the sword pierced through the night sky and pierced through Dustless's body. But it was worth mentioning that his calm face showed no signs of pain. He kept calm all the time. The overwhelming attack seemed to have not touched Dustless. He was safe and sound, quietly looking at Isteth. I am a flash person who has eaten the flash fruit. My body can be elementalized at will. All physics is a challenge for me. There is no plasticity. Calmly lifting his golden foot, a ray of light covered it. Dustless whispered, speed is power, Isteth. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light? Buzz buzz buzz, the flash of the little foot was getting brighter and brighter, and the tip of the sword was frightening. The cold sweat on the forehead was uncontrollably falling. Even with Isteth's stereotype, she was tense at the moment, as if she was facing a formidable enemy. Sorry, I was kicked by your speed of light last time. Even if there was a gap in strength, Isteth did not show weakness and choked Dustless. You woman. Dustless was quite entangled when he heard the words. Thinking of Isteth's character, he was afraid that she would not beg for mercy even if she died. Boom 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 boom. He was too lazy to talk nonsense. Dustless kicked out a huge light. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The huge flash galloped. The speed of light was too fast, and the sword was pointed at Isteth's face. Being hit by this kick, with the hardness of the human body in this world, he would be either dead or injured. Although Isteth had also been kicked by the speed of light last time, that was when Dustless did not use his full strength. It's useless to me. Isteth smiled calmly, and immediately her eyes solidified. Her thin lips spat out such a few words. Mok Potamo. When the voice fell, the world in the eyes of Isteth froze in an instant. Everything stopped. The flow of time and time, including the light, all stopped. I won this time. Isteth smiled and walked to Dustless. She took out the collar that had been prepared for a long time and put it on Dustless. Isteth had a sense of accomplishment for taming a person who was stronger than herself. After a while, the frozen space was all removed. Dustless was shocked to find that he had put on a collar. Surprised, right? Isteth put her hands on her hips and pointed to Dustless's face and said, "The final winner is me, and you will be mine in the future." However, Dustless just glanced at her calmly. "Miss Isteth, you are so young, your eyes have become blurry, please look more clearly." Dustless stared at Isteth with a strange look. "Well?" Isteth heard the words and frowned slightly. She stared at Dustless's neck subconsciously, but she found that the conspicuous collar had disappeared. At the same time, Isteth felt that her neck was heavy. She instinctively reached out and touched it, but she found that it was the collar she used on Dustless's head. Chapter 1609. Damn it, damn it. How did this damn bastard do it? Isteth cursed angrily. Although she had the hobby of putting collars on others, she was the sadist general, but this did not mean that she also had the hobby of being trained by others. Isteth's sadist character was only one-sided. In short, she liked to train others, liked to be strong, liked to trample on everyone's body and heart, but there was a crucial factor that could not be ignored. Isteth didn't like to be trained and trampled on by others. Hey, Dustless showed a playful smile, pulled the chain on the collar, and laughed with a very teasing tone. "Hurry up and call me Master Dustless," with a flattering tone. At the same time, Dustless also pulled the chain of the collar, and Isteth's body suddenly shook. "Go to hell." Isteth, who was angry out of shame, gnashed her teeth, and her body burst out a more violent cold air, and a super big sword appeared in her hand. And she unceremoniously stabbed Dustless's face. This face was too cheap, her lungs were full of fire, and if she looked at it a few more times, she would be angry and have internal injuries. "It's useless." Dustless glanced at the attack with disdain, his pupils widened, a ripple appeared in the void, and suddenly the attacking ice sword was annihilated. God's power. There was a crack in the space in front of Dustless, a small black hole was clearly visible, and directly swallowed the fatal attack, and then it disappeared completely like a stone sinking into the sea. "Any of your attacks are useless to me, give up." Grasping Dustless's chin, Dustless joked, "Hurry up and call me Master Dustless." "You are dreaming." Isteth clenched her teeth, her delicate face was green, and she wanted to cut Dustless into pieces. She could only vent her hatred by stabbing his bones and scattering his ashes. This evil guest, how on earth did you do it? Looking at the collar on her neck, Isteth clenched her fists and forcibly suppressed the anger in her heart. Her heart was full of confusion. She was sure to put the collar on Dustless, but she didn't expect it to be on her neck. Isteth was depressed when she thought about it. "Don't tell me it's your illusion again." Thinking of the sad experience of meeting Dustless for the first time, Isteth subconsciously looked at Silver's eyes, and her eyes were full of confusion and puzzlement. "You didn't use those strange eyes." Isteth was even more confused, looking at Dustless's eyes with the desire for knowledge. "Do you want to know how I do it?" Dustless, he grabbed Isteth's chin, and said seriously, "Come, call me Master Dustless, and I will fulfill your wish. Don't be delusional, I will definitely defeat you." Isteth, this guy was too annoying. "Really?" Dustless heard the words and smiled contemptuously. "You don't even know how you were tricked, and you still want to beat me? Don't you think your idea is ridiculous?" Isteth was speechless, she lowered her head unwillingly, and her clenched fists loosened. She didn't even know the enemy's tricks. Could she change the result the next time she met him? Obviously, it was impossible. If she met Dustless again, she was afraid that the result would be the same. Am I going to be suppressed by this guy for a lifetime? Isteth was angry. She was a competitive person. She could bear being suppressed by Dustless once or twice, and maybe she could get revenge in the future, but she would never be suppressed for a lifetime. Dustless, Master Dustless. Isteth, who was forced, could only call out these 4 words, but she hated him in her heart. She swore that she would let Dustless try all the criminal laws hundreds of times in the future. In fact, it's also genjutsu. After Dustless heard the words, he kept his promise and told the truth. Impossible, you can only release genjutsu with those strange eyes, Esteth questioned for the first time and stared at Dustless with annoyance. She couldn't wait to bite Dustless to death. He called Master Dustless, but casually made up an answer to fool her. How dare he? This is a fact. Did I tell you that you can only use genjutsu with Sharingan? Dustless asked, and then said lightly, Esteth, you are too immature after all. When fighting, don't use your eyes to see, but use your heart to feel the changes in the environment. Things like eyes are sometimes unreliable. It makes sense. Esteth nodded, and immediately stared at Dustless in surprise. She was puzzled. You exposed your advantages, aren't you afraid that I will turn the tables? Turn the tables? It seemed that he heard the funniest joke. Dustless grinned. Will sharks be afraid of small sardines? Will eagles that fly high be afraid of the blue sky? Will a strong giant be afraid of a weak baby? Esteth wanted to argue, but she was speechless. She lost everything in the two battles. Not to mention making Dustless bleed, she couldn't even touch Dustless's body. This is a good opportunity. Looking at Dustless, who had a lazy expression, Esteth's eyes flashed with ferocity. She opened her mouth to bite Dustless's face. All this happened too fast and too suddenly. Dustless didn't notice it. After all, Esteth was still wearing a collar around her neck, so Dustless suffered a loss. Although Dustless retreated at the first time, Esteth, who desperately wanted to make Dustless suffer a loss, broke out the limit of speed and suddenly caught Dustless's body. And she opened her mouth and bit Dustless's lower lip. Chapter 16:10. Dustless was dumbfounded, and there were ripples in his heart. He didn't expect Esteth to be so crazy. This ferocious look was like she wanted to die together with him. What the F***ck? After a while, Dustless's throat burst out such a sentence, it was enough to see his depression. Would a normal woman desperately want to bite a person to death? Of course not, especially biting the sensitive place like the mouth. But Dustless found that he was wrong. His opponent was a problem girl, Esteth. Especially now, Dustless's behavior completely trampled on the dignity of Esteth. In order to get revenge on himself, she had thrown away everything. Woo! There was also a choking sound in Esteth's mouth, because her gums were biting Dustless's lower lip. Her words were vague, and he couldn't hear what Esteth wanted to express. However, seeing her proud smile, Dustless also vaguely guessed what it meant. Aren't you arrogant? Aren't you proud? I'll make you bleed now. Although Dustless couldn't hear what Esteth wanted to say, from the corner of her mouth, it was roughly like this. I'm a little bit impressed by you. Staring calmly at Esteth, who was close at hand, Dustless praised, this kind of mentality is worthy of praise. You are indeed the strongest sadist general of the empire. Because Esteth was biting his lower lip, Dustless could even feel the heat in Esteth's mouth. Woo! Esteth continued to choke with a smile, and at the same time, she increased the strength of her bite. Her teeth sank deep into Dustless's lips. She looked at Dustless expectantly, trying to find a painful expression, but Esteth was destined to be disappointed. After so many years, Dustless had already lost the feeling of pain, and there was no reaction at all. You are a little bit arrogant. After a while, Dustless's mouth came out with such a cold sentence, and then he whispered, I'll teach you a lesson, so you won't be so self-righteous. Armament hockey hardening. The moment he said that, Dustless's mouth became as hard as steel. Ha 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 ha, but Esteth was instantly miserable. What was the feeling of biting the steel with all her strength? At this moment, Esteth finally had a very comfortable experience. Damn it, it hurts. Esteth grimaced in pain and stomped her feet angrily. She quickly let go of Dustless's lower lip. She wanted to cry but had no tears. This was a typical case of shooting herself in the foot. Looking at the proud face of Dustless, Esteth was depressed. her lungs were overturned, and she almost vomited blood. Dustless was fine, but Estetha's gums had traces of blood. It's almost time to retreat. See you later, Miss Esteth. After taking a playful glance at Esteth, Dustless politely waved his hand, and immediately his body faded rapidly, gradually losing its texture until it finally completely merged into the night sky. Esteth didn't even have time to react, and she watched Dustless disappear into the sky. Dustless? Next time we won't meet in the end, if we meet. I want you to understand how cruel my criminal law is. Esteth stayed for a few seconds, and then left after muttering to herself for a while. The base of the night raid. Although it was close to midnight, most of the members of the night raid couldn't sleep. They just killed Oka and a merchant who sold grain and oil. Akame and others took more time than expected. Boss Najenda and others were inevitably worried. Although everyone knew the rules of the killer, after getting along for a long time, it was inevitable that there would be feelings between them. Akame and others couldn't return at night, and all the members were quite worried. There shouldn't be a problem, Bullet said with a little nervousness. With Akame's ability, there will be no problem. She is just a captain of the guards. Gil said softly, but her expression was tight. Obviously, she was comforting herself. It's a pity that there is Tatsumi. Mine said what everyone was worried about. Akame had no problem, so did Leona. Dustless naturally had nothing to say. Although he was also a newcomer, his decisiveness in killing was more experienced than them. However, there was a fatal problem that couldn't be ignored. Tatsumi, the others were performing the task, but only this guy was dragging them down. Creak. At this moment, suddenly there was a violent sound of knocking on the door. Boss Najenda, as well as Mine and others, were stunned, and then they all looked forward to the source. The figures reflected in the pupils were Akame and others. Who? It seems that it's okay. After exhaling, Najenda's hanging heart was relieved. If Akame and others could come back, it meant that the task was completed. At the moment, she showed a happy smile. However, this smile was only for a moment. After taking a closer look at several people, her face became stiff instantly. Mine and others also had the same look. Looking around, they also found that one person was missing, Dustless. Boss, when we assassinated Oka, we suddenly encountered Esteth. Dustless stayed alone. As for the result, we don't know specifically. Akame said the reason with disappointment. Her expression was dim, and her face was pale and weak. Others were sad when they heard this. Esteth was the strongest sadist general of the empire. In their eyes, Dustless was dead. Chapter 1611. Everyone in the night raid bowed their heads when they heard the words. Although it was normal for assassins to leave, sometimes, it was inevitable for everyone to be sad. Just like the current scene, although the time they spent with Dustless was very short and rushed, everyone could not help but feel sad for a while. That guy is very popular. Tatsumi looked around, he didn't feel much. First, he only knew Dustless for a few days. Second, he had a long history of grievances with Dustless, especially Dustless often deliberately retaliated against Tatsumi. The relationship between the two was extremely bad. Did you encounter Esteth? Boss Najenda spat out an eye circle, was silent for a few seconds, and immediately said, I know Esteth's means, Dustless may not be able to save his life. That woman, all the members of the night raid were silent. All of them together may not be the opponent of Esteth. Esteth was also one of the most feared figures in the night raid. Who? After 3 minutes of silence, we will talk about other questions. Before Najenda's voice fell, it was disrupted by a very discordant voice. Silence? Who do you mourn for? Could it be that Tatsumi is dead? Then God really opened his eyes this time. The serious atmosphere was destroyed by this funny voice. Everyone was stunned and immediately rushed to the source. Dustless, who was full of expectations, suddenly appeared in front of them. It's a pity that Tatsumi is not dead. Looking at Tatsumi, who was injured but full of spirit, Dustless's face flashed a deep sadness. "Hey, do you know how to talk? You are dead." Tatsumi stared at Dustless unkindly. "This guy can't speak at all." "Dustless?" Leonine and Akame smiled happily, and their desperate faces were excited. The two attacked from the front and back, and Dustless was tightly surrounded. Cough, cough, cough. "Who are you mourning?" Seeing everyone's resurrected face, Dustless was extremely speechless. "Should it be me? Death is the strongest sadist general of the empire. Those who are targeted by her are all fleeing. I even prepared your funeral." Looking straight at Dustless, Najenda said bluntly. "It's a pity this time, that guy didn't kill me. And my luck is pretty good, I have escaped from his death twice." Glancing at Najenda, Dustless rolled his eyes. "No injury?" Bullet asked, staring at Dustless as if he saw a monster. It was a miracle for ordinary people to escape from his death, but Dustless was intact. "Let me see." Others just looked left and right, but Akame took off Dustless's clothes in a very strange way. If he didn't react quickly, maybe his shorts would be taken off by this guy. I expected his death to come back early, but why did she come back without stopping? Najenda was puzzled and said to herself. It took several days to return to the capital, but his death came back in less than half a day. She scratched her head and couldn't understand why his death was so anxious. Cough, 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 maybe it's because of me. When I didn't join the night raid, that guy suffered some losses in my hands. Maybe she is anxious to retaliate against me. Dustless shrugged helplessly. His death belonged to the best example of a person who went for wool and came back shorn. But, Najenda nodded slightly, and immediately nodded. Dustless and Tatsumi's level of being assassins still needs to be improved. You two learned from Akame yesterday, and you will follow mine tomorrow. Mine? Dustless and Tatsumi both frowned and looked at the pink-haired girl with double ponytails at the same time. This is the boss's decision. Do you two have any dissatisfaction? Mine raised her head proudly and put her hands on her waist. Of course. Tatsumi was more anxious than Dustless, and complained loudly, I seriously protest against this guy. Mine is the kind of person who uses public office to avenge private grudges. As in the original work, Tatsumi, who just joined the night raid, did not get along well with Mine. They often ridiculed each other, and the two sides were even full of gunpowder. Idiot. Glancing at Tatsumi faintly, Dustless decisively chose to be silent. He knew that after a while, Tatsumi would be unlucky. Leone. Najenda glanced at Leone, and then pointed to Tatsumi. I see. Leone nodded, she clenched her fists, and suddenly there was a crackling sound. She immediately rushed to Tatsumi without hesitation. Bang, bang, bang. Two ruthless punches fell. Tatsumi's head suddenly had a bunch of red bumps. Haven't you figured it out yet? If it weren't for Dustless, you would have been killed this time. Learn from Mine. Najenda ordered seriously. Although Mine was unreliable, she also defeated Tatsumi, who was a newcomer. As for involving Dustless, it was to deliberately attack Tatsumi, hoping that this guy would be brave after knowing the shame. Although Najenda was well-intentioned, Tatsumi did not have such a long-term vision. He was full of malice to Mine. There was no way. Dustless invaded the world. Although he changed a lot of things, some things still could not be changed. For example, the relationship between Mine and Tatsumi was not harmonious as in the original work, and it was even worse now. I have serious doubts about the ability of this guy. Glancing at Tatsumi, Mine swung her ponytail and snorted, I know it by looking at his face. You look like a loser. You. Tatsumi stared at Mine with fire. He rolled up his sleeves. If it were not because of many people, he really wanted to fight with Mine. As for you, her sight fell on Dustless. Mine's strange sight made Dustless's face changed slightly. He always felt that this weird girl was deliberately attacking him. Chapter 16:12. I should not be as bad as Tatsumi. Pointing to Tatsumi, Dustless asked directly regardless of Tatsumi's bitter face. You are indeed much better than him, and you are more trustworthy. Mine just nodded slightly when she heard the words, and she didn't care about Tatsumi's green face. Poor Tatsumi. A group of Night Raid members heard the words and stared at Tatsumi with pity. It was not that he couldn't do it, or he was too bad. On the contrary, Tatsumi was very hardworking and enterprising. This was also the reason why Bullet valued him. But, his competitor, Dustless, was too heaven-defying. In the final analysis, it was not that Tatsumi's ability was bad, but he was unlucky to meet such a powerful opponent like Dustless. Compared with the two, Tatsumi was trash, and the name of Dustless was confirmed. Let's call it a day. It was almost midnight. The boss Najenda waved her hand, indicating that everyone could disperse and rest. As an assassin, they must have enough energy. In the early morning of the next day, the sun rose from the east, and the sunshine was thousands of miles away. Several figures gathered in the conference room that usually had meetings. Now the sun is shining on the butt, mine is still sleeping. This boss is too unqualified, she will definitely lead me and Dustless to the ditch. Tatsumi looked at the scorching sun in the distance, full of complaints. On the other hand, Wu Chen was reading books lazily. Unknowingly, he had developed the habit of reading books. When he was bored in every world, he would read books. It was necessary to supplement his knowledge. Dustless, greeting the boss is also the work of the subordinates. This task is given to you. Hurry up, we still have a major task to perform today. Najenda looked at Dustless, meaning to let him call mine. It's finally fair for once. Tatsumi breathed a sigh of relief. He and mine didn't deal with each other. Dustless was the best scapegoat. No problem. Dustless heard the words and nodded. He turned and left the conference room and walked to mine's room. The new entrusted task is coming. The target to eliminate this time is the distant relative of Minister Ernest, Iokal. This guy uses his identity to bully people and do all kinds of evil things. He has done countless bad things. Since no one can punish him, then I will attack Heaven's punishment at night and eliminate him. As soon as Dustless left, the boss said today's task. Because the target was a distant relative of Ernest, and there was the protection of the masters of Huangquan Temple, in view of the danger of this task, and now that his death suddenly returned to the capital, Najenda decided to attack at night. At the same time, Wu Chen also walked to mine's room. Dong dong. After knocking on the door twice, Wu Chen saw that no one responded, so he gently pushed the door. Creak. The door was gently pushed open. The scene in front of him made Dustless lost his mind for a few seconds. He saw that mine was preparing to wear clothes. At this moment, she only wore a pink bra and pink briefs. Her white skin was all exposed in front of Dustless's eyes. Both of them were a little dull, and they looked at each other stupidly for a while. Mine's room was in a mess. The clothes were scattered all over the floor. A lot of underwear all appeared in front of Dustless's eyes. The scene was suddenly very embarrassing. Boy, choose a way to die that you like. Mine's face turned red instantly. Her romantic taigu, pumpkin, the front of the muzzle had condensed a lot of flashes. She aimed at Dustless's head mercilessly. The light was about to destroy Dustless's body. This has nothing to do with me. Dustless's eyes were indifferent. He said calmly, first of all, I knocked on the door. The person who did not respond is you. It is reasonable for me to break in. Secondly, the boss ordered me to come to meet the boss, so you have to be prepared in advance. Also, the boss said that there is an important task to get rich. The time is tight. I can't wait for you. You are very good at talking. Mine opened her mouth and found that she had nothing to say. Dustless's words were reasonable. She did not respond when he knocked on the door, and Najenda also mentioned this to her. But, your reaction is too strange. You look down on me. You seriously hurt my dignity. Mine's cheeks were full of indignation. The extinguished taigu pumpkin shone again. She blushed as if she had been wronged. Dustless was confused. He did not know what was wrong with this girl. He did not seem to provoke her. Is this girl's head rusty? Dustless looked at the flash that locked him, his cheeks suddenly darkened. He asked angrily, "What do you mean? Now tell me clearly." "You don't have any reaction when you see my body, you are looking down on me, mocking me that I don't have the charm of a woman." After a while, Mine said a very ridiculous answer. No wonder the relationship between Tatsumi and Mine is so bad, this girl's head is really broken. Hearing this strange reason, Dustless could not help but be dumbfounded. He raised his middle finger to Mine's strange idea. Dustless broke into the room without knowing it. Mine's aggrieved appearance of crying was still vivid in Dustless' mind. He wanted to dig his eyes out. Now she said that Dustless had no reaction to her body. This was looking down on her. It was simply unreasonable. "This time I am unlucky, I didn't look at the almanac when I went out. There is still an assassination task today, goodbye." Dustless cursed his bad luck secretly. He decisively turned and left. He finally could understand Tatsumi's pain. For Mine, this kind of thinking, he said that he was unable to deal with it. 1 second, she accused him of peeping at her body, and the next second, she accused him of having no lust and having no reaction to her body. Was there such a person in the world? If I didn't guess wrong, the assassination target of this mission seems to be the distant relative of Minister Ernest. In the quiet corridor, Dustless muttered, and behind him was the arrogant girl who angrily chased after him, Mine. Chapter 16:13. Mine ran over angrily. She did not expect Dustless to be so arrogant. He should know that she was his boss today. Now this guy did not even respect his boss. Unforgivable. Stop right there. Mine grabbed Dustless's hands and immediately blocked in front of him. She shouted arrogantly, "I am your boss today. Pay attention to your attitude." Attitude? What attitude? Dustless ignored her, and then his face showed ridicule. He ridiculed, "If you continue to take off your clothes, I must run far away, so as not to get involved." Mine stamped her feet when she heard the words. Looking at Dustless's particularly annoying face, she couldn't help but be angry. She had to use her trump card. "You are not qualified. You are definitely not qualified to be an assassin. Continue to be a cook with aim. That's not up to you. If the boss says so, I have no opinion." Shrugging, Dustless passed over Mine's shoulder and went straight to the direction of the conference room. "You better not fall into my hands." Glaring at Dustless fiercely, Mine, who had nowhere to vent her anger, blushed and was extremely uncomfortable. "Where is Tatsumi? You two novices are outrageous. One ignored my authority, and the other simply did not come to greet me. Do you still need to say it? That's because Tatsumi looks down on you." Dustless suddenly added fuel to the fire and smiled maliciously. If Mine was willing to beat Tatsumi, it would be a good deal. I will let that guy go for the time being." Mine was not fooled, but followed Dustless's footsteps to the conference room. "Are you two finally here?" As soon as he came in, Tatsumi's strange voice sounded. He tried to capture the depression from Dustless's face. After all, Mine was notoriously difficult to serve. Unexpectedly, Dustless seemed to be fine, but Mine was furious. Mine seemed to notice Tatsumi's sight. Mine just glared at him, and Tatsumi suddenly shrank his neck. "Is this guy angry? I didn't offend her." Tatsumi was secretly depressed. He had a feeling of being shot even when he was lying down. He looked at Dustless gloomily. Dustless was definitely the one who set him up. "Everyone, move out for the night raid. Our target this time is Iokal. I repeat, that guy is a distant relative of Minister Ernest. He is protected by the masters of the Huangquan Temple. Everyone, be careful." Boss Najenda finally ordered, and then all the members of the night raid nodded and disappeared. Swish. Swish. In the dark room, several black shadows were running around. Everyone's skills were extremely vigorous. Even Tatsumi, a rookie, was improving rapidly. He was trained quite well by Bullet. The members of the night raid barely recognized Tatsumi's existence. The hazy moonlight hung high in the sky, and the night was exceptionally quiet. Do you see that brightly lit villa? That is the place where Yoko lives. There are masters around to protect it. We will definitely suffer if we approach it rashly. It is not far from the capital. Maybe there will be support from the army. Akame pointed to the huge building complex in the distance and introduced it to Dustless and others. Let mine do the long-range sniping. She is a shooting genius, so we will not be exposed. Looking at mine, Dustless suggested. Of course, I can definitely blow his head. Being praised by Dustless in public, mine was quite proud. She raised the taigu and looked like she was very strong. But, then Leonette lowered her voice and frowned. Boss asked us to complete the task tonight, but what if Yoko stays at home and doesn't come out? How can mine snipe? And if the time is delayed for a long time, it will attract the attention of the capital. Minister Ernest attaches great importance to that guy. Lubbock also worried. Recently, Esteth was searching for them like crazy. If there was any trouble, she would come and find trouble with Night Raid. It's actually very simple to drive Yoko out of the house. Dustless said and attracted everyone's attention. What plan? Night Raid asked curiously. It was difficult to think of a way to end the battle quickly. Hee. Dustless heard the words and just laughed twice. He did not say much. His eyes just looked at Tatsumi. The cunning look made Tatsumi vomit blood. Poochie. The water that he drank a few hours ago was all spat out. Tatsumi knew that Dustless was going to trick him again. Tatsumi went to set fire to the guy's house, and he ran out. Dustless said with a smile, unless the guy wants to be burned alive, he will definitely run out of the courtyard. Why don't you go? Tatsumi asked with a black face. Akame and others are responsible for blocking the enemy, and I am responsible for protecting the safety of mine. Only you are free. If you don't go, who will go? Dustless asked calmly. You can also go, I am responsible for protecting mine. Tatsumi argued with reason. He was particularly unhappy to be ordered by Dustless. Because I am stronger than you, so I am more suitable to protect mine. She is a sniper. She is not good at close combat. I am the one who is best at close combat. Dustless said as a matter of fact. Tatsumi wanted to cry but had no tears. It seemed that he was the weakest in this team. He had no choice but to obey Dustless's order to be responsible for setting the fire. Mine, you decide who will set the fire. Tatsumi looked at the arrogant Mine expectantly with his bright eyes. Unexpectedly, Mine's words made Tatsumi dizzy with anger. You look so bad. If I team up with you, I will definitely be killed first. Dustless is right. You set the fire, and he is responsible for covering me. Mine was very comfortable with Dustless's flattery just now. The feeling of floating had not disappeared yet. At the same time, she was disgusted with Tatsumi. This guy was much worse than Dustless. Chapter 1614. Tatsumi even had the thought of committing suicide. He stared at Mine and Dustless sadly. He did not expect that these two people would go together, and now they even wore the same pants. Tatsumi's mind was blank and confused. Why don't you go? Looking at Tatsumi, who was unlucky, Dustless was particularly refreshed. Phew. Tatsumi did not forget to look at Dustless when he left. Then he went to set the fire without hesitation to carry out the stupid plan of Dustless. For this fantasy plan, Tatsumi naturally resisted. Last time, he listened to Dustless's bad idea of dressing as a man. As a result, he was beaten violently by Aoka, who recognized him, and he even lost a few teeth. Tatsumi only hoped to survive this time. It was a good ending if he did not die. Isn't this a bit difficult for Tatsumi? Akame could not bear to stand up. In her eyes, although Tatsumi was unreliable, there was no doubt that he was also one of the companions. Don't worry, as long as I can lead Aoka out, I can kill him in an instant. Mine raised the taiga pumpkin and said confidently. If Tatsumi can't even complete this kind of thing, I will personally send him home. Bullets suddenly said, it was just setting a fire. If he could not complete this, then he should not be a killer. He should go home to wash and sleep quickly. Boom boom boom. Tatsumi did not let everyone down this time. After only a few minutes of sneaking in, he set a fire in several different directions, and the choking smoke rose to the sky. It's better that the kid is burned to death himself. Sitting lazily on the treetop, Dustless picked up a grass in his mouth, and his head lazily rested on his hands, looking at the situation in the distance. After a while, he reminded, Mine, the guy named Aoka is coming out, get ready. Impossible. Mine was stunned and then denied, it is hundreds of meters away from Aoka's house. You don't have any instrument to help you. How can human eyes see clearly? If you don't believe it, you can have a look. Dustless shrugged and said indifferently. This, Mine nodded slightly. Through the precise optical telescope in her right eye, the scene hundreds of meters away was very clear. Because the house was burned, Iokal, who escaped in a panic, was panting heavily, and a large number of followers followed behind him. What kind of freak is this guy? Mine scratched her head and couldn't figure out why a human being could see the face of a person hundreds of meters away. This was something that only monsters could do. Phew, stable complex emotions, the taigu in Mine's hand pointed to Iokal's head. Bang bang. After a while, a gunshot rang out, and a golden ray of light shot out, piercing through the night sky and instantly closing in on Iokal's head. Poochie. The next second, his head was pierced by Mine. Good marksmanship. Dustless and others were amazed. At the same time, except for Dustless and Mine, the others rushed to the ambush location in advance. Since Iokal was killed, his men would definitely go crazy. If there was no murderer, they could not explain to Minister Ernest, then they would die. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Sure enough, Iokal was killed, and it immediately attracted countless killers. They all rushed to the place where Mine shot the gun. The mission is completed, let's retreat. Mine stretched out and suggested. The idea is good, but we have no chance. Dustless's sight extended to the limit, he could see the wind and grass around him. He sighed, many people are coming, we are surrounded. No. Mine heard the words and suddenly retorted loudly, how long has it been, how can they catch up with us? Did someone lead them here? You are really right. Dustless shrugged and looked along his sight. He found that a thin figure was running quickly. This person was Tatsumi, and behind him was a group of boxing masters of Huangquan Temple, this idiot. Mine's mouth twitched when she saw this. She wanted to shoot Tatsumi, this idiot. Why did he run here? He could change to another position. This kid is also helpless. Dustless rarely helped Tatsumi, and said plainly, don't you understand? Tatsumi means to attract all the enemies and annihilate them in one fell swoop. Annihilate them in one fell swoop. Mine's face darkened, and she glanced over. There were at least dozens of people. Could they be annihilated at will? Tatsumi's action was a blatant deceptive behavior. It seems that there is no way. Akame and the others have left. There are only 3 of us. Dustless frowned. It seemed that Mine, himself, and Tatsumi were all besieged. This idiot, let me kill Tatsumi first. Mine, who was angry, shouted. The pumpkin even shone and aimed at Tatsumi's head. Didn't I say before, you are responsible for sniping, and I am responsible for close combat. Dustless jumped down from the treetop and moved his waist. Under Mine's horrified gaze, a large group of lights condensed in his hand. Yasakani no Magatama. The golden light bullets instantly shot out like countless shooting stars. They were exceptionally dazzling, and they instantly tore apart and exterminated all living creatures. Poochie. 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 Under Mine's surprised gaze, the masters of Huangquan Temple were slaughtered in an instant. The situation was almost overwhelming. There was no difference between the strong and the weak. Anyone who was in contact with the light would definitely die. Everyone showed a painful expression. Their bodies had been destroyed and pierced by the light. They died horribly. Chapter 16:15. Looking at the horrified body, even with Mine's temperament, she was also shocked. Needless to say, Tatsumi was already scared and panicked. Grew. Mine and Tatsumi both choked and looked at Dustless with awe. No matter how the times changed, people's nature of following the strong would not change. This guy. I am not in the same dimension as him. Up to now, Tatsumi also knew the gap with Dustless. This guy was not a human being. Was this kind of trick that killed dozens of people in an instant that a human being should have? Tatsumi's eyes looking at Dustless also changed. Is this guy a human who disguised as a super dangerous species? Tatsumi secretly guessed. In fact, not only Tatsumi had this strange idea, even Mine was no exception. She was shocked by that kind of large-scale trick. It could be confirmed that it was not a taigu, then it could only be a super dangerous species in the legend. Hey, you are not a super dangerous species that turned into a human being. Taigu aimed at Dustless. Mine asked unkindly, you are very suspicious. After hearing the words, Dustless just glanced at Mine faintly. The girl wore a pink dress, a breeze came, the pink ponytail danced with the wind, the delicate face was full of alert, the face was full of confidence. It seemed that she could kill all the enemies. She was very confident in her strength. At this time, Dustless's brows slightly raised, staring at the forest behind Mine, his eyebrows flashed an imperceptible coldness. Phew phew phew. Dustless's incarnation flashed, he appeared behind Mine in a flash like a light, and he held Mine tightly with the speed of lightning. Bastard, what do you want to do? Mine was shocked by this sudden move, her face suddenly became as red as an apple. When she was about to point at Dustless's nose and scold him, a sudden change occurred. Damn, your reaction is really sharp. A black shadow came out of the woods, it was only an inch away from Mine. Even the cold sword that had been out of the sheath had been taken out of the sheath, it wanted to cut Mine into pieces. Damn it, Mine scolded when she saw this. Her anger toward Dustless also disappeared in an instant. If it weren't for Dustless, maybe she would have been killed. Thinking about it, Mine felt a chill. Die. The Imperial Fist Temple attacker who suddenly appeared shouted. The crescent blade in his hand had already stabbed forward. It was so fast that only an afterimage could be seen. So fast. Mine's face changed slightly. Because this person changed his speed quickly and ran in an S-shaped route, almost every time it was a fleeting moment. In an instant, it had approached Mine and Dustless. Since you're working so hard, I'll prepare a luxurious funeral for you. Dustless murmured as he glanced at the black afterimage. In the void, countless sharp black blades attacked from all directions. Dow Breaker 90, Black Coffin. Although this person ran fast, compared with Dow Breaker 90, Black Coffin, he was insignificant. His speed was as slow as a turtle, and he was killed by Black Coffin in an instant. Poochie. 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 The sound of the body being cut suddenly sounded. The attacker of Imperial Fist Temple disappeared instantly. There were only some bones on the ground, the broken bones and the dismembered internal organs. Vomit 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 vomit. Seeing such a bloody scene, Tatsumi couldn't help but vomit. Although he had been an assassin for a few days, it was the first time for him to witness such a miserable ending. Cough cough cough. Mine coughed twice awkwardly, and immediately jumped out of Dustless's arms. She pointed at Dustless and said proudly, "Don't think that you can hug me casually because you saved me." Really, Wuchen just glanced at her coldly and muttered to himself, "I wonder who was the one who was wriggling in my arms like a cat, you." After these words, Mine instantly blushed and stamped her feet. Then she quickly turned her back to Dustless. It couldn't be helped. It was a nerve reflex that couldn't help. The abnormality of Dustless and Mine attracted the attention of other members of the night raid. When everyone rushed over, the scene was already full of screams. Among the dozens of corpses, only 3 people were alive. Mine, Dustless, and Tatsumi, who was vomiting. In the early morning of the next day, the scorching sun filled the whole sky. Yesterday's task was completed very well. You really didn't let me down, Dustless. Patting Dustless's shoulder, the boss Najenda looked very relieved. As for Tatsumi, he had been ignored by him. Boss, glancing at Najenda helplessly, Dustless said bluntly, the boss has a task for me, otherwise she will not come to me early in the morning. You found it? Najenda was surprised, and immediately admitted it generously. She cautiously said, there is indeed a dangerous person. Is it the beheading Zank? The boss came to witness it because she wants me to kill him. It's better to take back the kid's Taigu, right? How do you know? Najenda was surprised. She didn't tell anyone about it. It's very simple. Dustless explained and complained to himself, although the night raid is a killer, the essential purpose is to eradicate the corruption in this country. Those turbulent factors, the future country does not need, are naturally the first target of the night raid. Chapter 16:16. But, at this point, Dustless's voice fell silent. He was not afraid of Zank the Decapitator. That kid was just a clown. The reason why the Empire could collapse in the future was undoubtedly due to the efforts of Scarlet Eye and the others. However, there was almost no trace of them in the rise of the new country. It was really not worth it to sacrifice for them. It's good that you know the beheading Zank. He is different from other enemies. He is a Taigu user. In the duel between Taigu, one party will definitely die, so, Najenda's tone said until here, and her voice stopped. She looked at Dustless with expectation. The meaning was self-evident. She probably expected Dustless to kill the beheading Zank alone. Unfortunately, his plan was doomed to fail. Najenda. Next time when you discuss this kind of secret with me, you'd better look behind you. Pointing to the position of the bedroom door, Dustless spread his hands to show that it had nothing to do with him. Najenda turned her head and looked. It was Akame and others who were wearing pajamas. It is too dangerous for such a dangerous person to be solved by Dustless alone. Taigu users should be solved by us who have Taigu. Akame took a step forward and volunteered. Looking carefully, Akame and mine, as well as Leon and Gil, including Najenda, were all wearing pajamas. Their curvaceous figures were exposed, but at this moment, everyone was immersed in the beheading Zank incident, and ignored the sneaky eyes. Lubbock was still sleeping, Bullet and Tatsumi went out to patrol. Such a beautiful scenery only benefited Dustless. Leave it to me, I also want to see the difference between the Taiga users. Stretching deeply, Dustless walked out of the quilt, opened the curtains, and enjoyed the morning sun comfortably. He closed his eyes, and his expression was a little lazy. He closed his eyes very lazily, murmuring and humming a song. He seemed to be in a good mood. This guy, mine looked at Dustless with a little stupor. At present, he was the opposite of the usual pompous Dustless. He looked very peaceful, warm and trustworthy. The rising sun shone on Dustless's face, which was particularly charming. I didn't expect this guy to have such a gentle side. Thinking of the experience of being hugged by Dustless yesterday, mine couldn't help blushing. She looked around subconsciously, but found that Chi Tong and others were staring at Dustless. Somehow, mine was quite uncomfortable. Out of a woman's nature, mine could feel the strange sight of Chi Tong and others. Dustless in this state was particularly lazy, revealing an indescribable unique temperament. Unlike his usual sloppy self, he was very confident. No, let's go together this time. Mine took the lead in retorting, with a tone that she would definitely kill Zank. Do as you like. Glancing at mine in surprise, Dustless felt strange. He was not confident when mine stared at him. After all, this guy still hated him a few days ago. Today, her tone vaguely had a sense of protection. Let's do it after dark. Seeing that everyone insisted, Najenda no longer stopped them. Everything was opposite. There were advantages and disadvantages. Killing Zank in a group could also increase their experience in the future. After all, Isteth was a real Taiga user. They would meet this guy sooner or later. It was good to do an experiment in advance now. But I have a suggestion. Mine suddenly spoke at this time and rationally suggested, this is a battle between Taiga users. I suggest not to let Tatsumi participate in it. Killing Zank is too difficult for him. No problem, I will explain this to Tatsumi personally. Let's do it tonight, sneak into the capital. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A cold wind swept across the vast land. The empire at midnight was especially frightening. In some small alleys, one could even hear hysterical curses. The capital at night was a hell in human skin. It seems that the boss failed. Tatsumi followed again. On the abandoned building, several black shadows were looming in the night sky. Only people with excellent eyesight could see these figures clearly with the faint moonlight. The person who complained about Tatsumi was dustless. What are you looking at? You can come without Taigu, why can't I come? Tatsumi found dustless's strange eyes, and suddenly shouted with dissatisfaction. Whatever you want, don't blame us for not reminding you when you die. But, looking at the wanted order in his hand, Dustless was quite entangled and complained, this must be Istetha's revenge on me deliberately. How can I be so ugly? Just a few days ago, Dustless was also inevitably wanted, and his wanted order was all over the street. Killing Zank, the guy specially selects the person who is alone. Each of us is divided into two groups to walk on the street and attract that guy out. Mine and Hill were a group, Bullet and Tatsumi were a group, Lionel and Lubbock were a group. As for Dustless, this time he and Akame were a group to search for Killing Zank. On the dark street, Dustless and Akame walked side by side. The bottomless street was particularly gloomy and terrifying. The deeper they went, the more obvious the screams were. We don't seem to be the target. Dustless shook his head slightly and remembered Tatsumi, who was targeted in the original work. He grabbed Akame's small hand and rushed to the area where Tatsumi and Bullet were responsible. Being suddenly attacked by Dustless, Akame struggled for a while and gave up after she had no result. She let Dustless take her to the place. Chapter 16-17. On the other side, Bullet and Tatsumi were also struggling to track down Zank. Damn Dustless. Tatsumi cursed Dustless in his heart as he walked. Since meeting this guy, his life has fallen into the most miserable period. Tatsumi, when performing a task, you have to concentrate. Looking at the absent-minded Tatsumi, Bullet suddenly shouted, otherwise, at your level, you will never surpass Dustless in your life. Bullet had to come up with his secret weapon. The words, Dustless, were spiritual food for Tatsumi. So I still have a chance to surpass that guy? Sure enough, after hearing the words, Dustless, Tatsumi suddenly felt refreshed and asked with great expectation, I also hope that I will surpass Dustless in the future. Unfortunately, speaking of this, Tatsumi's mouth twitched obviously, thinking of Dustless's abnormal record, like a deflated ball, he suddenly became very dispirited. That guy is very strong, but he is just a human being. We are all human beings. If you can work hard, you may directly surpass him in the future. Bullet smiled and persuaded, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. Don't talk about Tatsumi, he can't do it himself. He said this just to cheer Tatsumi up. Happy, on a tall building, a strange man with a hideous face looked down at Bullet and the depressed Tatsumi. His evil face was directly distorted, revealing a thrilling killing intent. Since you are so depressed, I will send you to heaven. This person is Zank, and the person he is staring at is Tatsumi. Where did those two guys go? After running a few streets, Dustless did not find any trace of Tatsumi. In desperation, he could only spread out his observation haki. Why are you sure that Zank will look for Tatsumi? That guy is temperamental, and his goal may be us. Akame blinked her beautiful eyes and asked. Because that guy looks like he died early. Dustless curled his lips and snorted disdainfully. This was the case in the original work. The poor Tatsumi was the first to be beheaded by Zank. If Akame hadn't arrived in time, that kid would have died long ago. Found it. After a while, Dustless's closed eyes suddenly opened, shooting out a burst of cold light. Is it Tatsumi? Scarlet Pupil asked expectantly. She was even more curious about Dustless's ability. This guy stood still, but he said that he found Tatsumi. After searching a few streets, he didn't find Tatsumi. No, Dustless shook his head. He shifted his gaze and stared at the dark street on the left. The silhouette with fiery eyes appeared on the surface of the water. We didn't find Tatsumi, but we did find Zank. No, rather than saying that we found him, it's better to say that this guy took the initiative to find us. Facing Zank's shocked gaze, Dustless appeared extremely calm. Akame's katana was unsheathed, like a knight guarding in front of Dustless. What a pity, Dustless sighed in his heart. He originally wanted to use Zank to kill Tatsumi, but he didn't expect this guy to find him and Scarlet Pupil in advance. According to Scarlet Pupil's temperament, she would never let this guy go so easily. Ta. It was also at this time that the alley on the other side seemed to have noticed the abnormality here. A burst of hurried footsteps ran over without stopping. It's Tatsumi and Bullet. After figuring out who the newcomers were, Dustless frowned slightly, sighing inwardly that Zanka was so unlucky. He didn't encounter Tatsumi and Bullet, who were relatively weak, but he encountered himself and Akame instead. Happy. Zank's excited laughter came out of the beheading man's mouth. He muttered to himself, I'm so lucky to have met you too. Fortunately, I didn't sneak attack the combination just now, otherwise, would definitely be finished. Although that kid is very weak, that strong guy is unreliable. I'm not sure if I can win against him. Kid and strong guy? Scarlet Pupil raised her eyebrows slightly when she heard this. She glanced at Zank in surprise. He should be talking about Bullet and Tatsumi, right? Dustless said lightly and asked with great interest, You're called Zank, right? You're right, Bullet's strength is not something you can compete with. But now that you're treating me and Scarlet Pupil as prey, do you think we're easier to deal with than Bullet? Happy, Zank laughed when he heard this and said proudly, Yes, that strong guy is called Bullet. I felt a threat from that man, so I changed the prey to the two of you. How is it? My eyes are good, right? Happy. Who asked you two to be weaker than him? Is that so? Dustless glanced at him coldly when he heard this. Then, light flickered on his right arm, and a slender golden greatsword was formed in an instant. Swish. Dustless turned into a golden light and instantly appeared in front of Zank. The greatsword containing golden light had already swept towards Zank. Poochie. This guy didn't even have time to react before he was instantly crippled by Dustless, and one of his arms was easily cut off. How is this possible? I didn't see it at all. Zank looked at the figure in front of him in disbelief. His bulging eyeballs were terrifying as if they were about to fall out. Your eyes are good, but Bullet's is stronger than yours. This is a fact. However, Scarlet Pupil and I who are hiding our auras are far more dangerous than Bullet and Tatsumi. Chapter 16-18. So fast. Akame was also stunned. She realized that when Dustless appeared, Janka's arm had already fallen. It was too fast, everything happened in a split second. In fact, if it weren't for the sound of Zank's arm falling off, Scarlet I would still be in the dark and wouldn't have realized what had happened. How is this possible? Zank was dumbfounded. He even forgot about the pain of losing his arm. His eyes were fixed on the young silhouette in front of him. That thin body and pale face, it was obvious that he was a pampered young master. How could he possess such unprecedented strength? Damn it. Janka vomited blood. He thought that the hungry wolf found a fat sheep, but the cruel scene in front of him made him shocked to find that the weak sheep suddenly turned into a fierce tiger. Even if I die, I will drag you to the grave with me. Janka's eyes were fierce, and he quickly launched the ability of Taigu. Buzz, The taigu tied to his forehead flashed with emerald light, and then Janka laughed arrogantly. Ha ha ha. I will win this duel. Janka's taigu, omnipotent 5 vision, observer, a taigu with 5 abilities: insight, farsight, X-ray, future vision, and illusion. Insight could see through the other person's mind by observing the expression. Farsight could see things in the distance. X-ray could ignore obstacles to see the target. Future vision could see the next situation through the subtle movements of muscles. Illusion could make the other person see illusions. Ha ha ha. Are you hallucinating now? I am the closest person to you. Janka laughed arrogantly in his heart. His other arm had already picked up the big sword cruelly. Dustless in front of him was motionless. His expression always remained cold. Deep in his calm eyes, there were no waves. Ha ha ha. Go to hell. With an excited shout, Janka's right arm held the big sword and slashed down. Poochie. Blood splashed into the void and scattered all over the ground. It showed a blood-red plum blossom shape, which was extremely strange. At the same time, a huge body knelt on the ground. How is this possible? The injured person. Why is it me? I should be the closest person to you now. Zank the decapitator roared at the sky. Looking closely, a scorched wound had appeared on his chest, and the fatal wound was rapidly devouring his life force. A demon like you would even lay hands on your own family? Janka, who noticed that his vitality was gone, was furious. His face was full of fear. In front of this guy, he was trampled miserably like a little mouse. The so-called super weapon, taigu, was useless. It's too funny. Without even looking at Zank, Dustless's face only showed a touch of ridicule. The ignorant are fearless. Playing genjutsu in front of me, who has Rinnegan Sharingan, I really don't understand where your confidence comes from. No matter what kind of illusion, the essence was a spiritual attack. For Dustless, who had a huge and invincible spiritual power, this little taigu wanted to use illusion on him. It was completely humiliating. It's almost time to come. Glancing at the figures coming from the depths of the dark street, Dustless's cheeks flashed a strange smile. He leaned close to Janka's ear, smiled coldly, and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Now, I will let you see what a real genjutsu is. Use your last time to kill Tatsumi, my loyal soldier." Ordering me? Janka the decapitator was furious when he heard that. Do you think I can be ordered casually? He opened his mouth, and when he was about to mock Dustless, a majestic spiritual power invaded Janka the decapitator's mind. It was more than hundreds of times stronger than taigu. Janka the decapitator instantly became strange, and he turned to stare at the intruder who suddenly appeared. Ah! Janka the decapitator suddenly stood up and went crazy. Regardless of the many wounds on his body, he crazily slashed at Tatsumi. Only careful people could find that the depths of this guy's eyes lost their luster. He was just a puppet, and the person who controlled him was Dustless. Why did this homicidal maniac suddenly attack me? Tatsumi looked at Janka the decapitator, who was bloodthirsty, and he wanted to cry but had no tears. He just wanted to witness the scene of Dustless being brutally beaten. Who knew that Janka the decapitator's brain suddenly went crazy, and he did not hesitate to kill him together. Clang! Tatsumi was not weak either. He immediately pulled out a big sword to fight back against Janka the decapitator. Boom boom boom. However, Tatsumi was obviously not the opponent of Janka the decapitator. The two sides just met face to face. Tatsumi was blown dozens of meters away by the force from the giant sword, and he spat out blood. Janka the decapitator chased after him. When he was about to kill him completely, a shadow in armor fell from the sky, and the cold light that followed cut Janka the decapitator's throat. Poochie! The cold light flashed fiercely, smashed Janka the decapitator in one fell swoop, and his head was smashed into pieces. The sky even had a horrible bloody rain full of the smell of blood. Looking up, it was Tatsumi's backer, Bullet. This guy really likes to meddle in other people's business. Originally, I was not interested in you, but if you want to die, then you can't blame me for being ruthless. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly, staring at the majestic Bullet, and a piercing chill flashed across his cheeks. He just wanted to kill Tatsumi with a borrowed knife. If Bullet meddled in other people's business, he could only kill him as well. It's good that everyone is fine. Akame breathed a sigh of relief. Killing Janka the Decapitator so easily was beyond her expectations. There was no such thing as a stalemate. Dustless's attack was a one-sided crushing and annihilation. Chapter 16-19. Looking at Tatsumi, who was safe and sound, Dustless was quite upset. This guy's protagonist aura made him ridiculously lucky. Every time, there was a savior who helped him. In this case, then he could only get rid of this savior, Bullet. You are really powerful, Dustless. Bullet liberated the armor and looked at the wound on Zank's abdomen. Dustless almost crushed his internal organs with one sword, and all the internal organs were burned by the light sword, and the smell of the strange barbecue filled the air. Is this thing a taigu? Looking at the emerald ornaments scattered on the ground, Tatsumi excitedly picked them up and put them on his hand. How about I use this thing? It's not up to you to decide. Glancing at Tatsumi coldly, Dustless's palm broke out a strong gravitational force. Wanxiang Tianyu. The taigu in Tatsumi's hands suddenly fell into the hands of Dustless, and he said without hesitation, the ownership of this thing can only be decided by the boss. Tatsumi was angry when he heard the words. He wanted to beat Dustless, but he retracted his hand. The strength of this guy was too terrifying. 100 or even 1,000 of him were not his opponents. The two sides were completely incomparable. At the same time, Gil and Mine also heard the news and came to look at the body on the ground. The two women were relieved, and then everyone returned to the base after a few words. Tatsumi, try it first. Inside the base of the night raid, the voice of the boss Najenda sounded. Thank you, boss, I will not let you down. Tatsumi excitedly took over the taigu that was handed over. This was the relic of Zank. Tatsumi, you have to believe in your ability. Tatsumi's boss, Bullet, encouraged loudly. I will, brother. Tatsumi heard the words and nodded excitedly. He immediately learned the appearance of Zank and put the taigu on his head. He stared at Bullet in front of him, and then he was in a trance. After a while, Bullet's naked appearance came into his eyes. What did you see? Mine, Leonette and others asked. Hee, Dustless smirked and deliberately raised his voice. I heard the guy Zank said that his taigu has the ability of 5 vision, that is, insight, telescopic, clairvoyant, future vision, and illusion. Tatsumi is so fascinated, he probably saw Bullet's naked body. TSK. Saliva is flowing out. Sure enough, Tatsumi and Bullet are both gay. No wonder you two get along so well. Pucci. Tatsumi turned his head angrily when he heard the words. However, before he turned his head, he was sent flying with a punch. Bang bang bang. Leonette, who was straightforward, gave Tatsumi a few punches without hesitation, and then forcibly took away Tatsumi's taigu, and said to the boss directly, such obscene props should not appear inside the night raid. Not bad. Chi Tong, Mine and others nodded and agreed with Leonie's suggestion. What would happen if this thing fell into the hands of a man with bad intentions? Since this is the case, give it to the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. The boss Najenda thought deeply and nodded. It was too dangerous to leave this strange taigu in the night raid, and it was not useful. Recently, there are many corrupt officials who have no conscience. You continue to go to the imperial capital to perform the task. You must eliminate the root of the problem. Najenda said with a murderous tone. This bastard is really hateful. I finally got a taigu, and it disappeared because of Dustless. Damn it, Wuchen couldn't have been sent down by the heavens to deliberately go against me, right? Tatsumi had a sad expression, not to mention that he was punched by Leonette for a few times, even the taiga that was eager to see through also said goodbye to him. Tatsumi's heart was broken into ice. In the magnificent palace. General Death, you have made a contribution to defeat the alien race, and you are rewarded with thousands of gold. Sitting on the dragon throne made of gold, the young Emperor Death said. Thank you, Your Majesty, please give these things to my subordinates. Death nodded. Although this little guy was the emperor, she did not respect him at all. After all, he was just a plaything of the Minister Ernest. He was just a puppet prop used to control the empire. General, what other wishes do you have? It seemed that she felt sorry for his death. The young emperor said generously, everything you want will be realized. Your Majesty is wise. A tall and strong man walked out from the back of the emperor's dragon throne, holding a piece of meat in his hand and biting it. All the wishes of General Death will be realized. Do you have other wishes? Death bowed her head and thought for a moment. She suddenly remembered the outline of Dustless in her mind. In the past, Death had no goals in life because she was invincible in the world. Now Dustless suddenly rose. Death was full of expectations for the future. I have 3 wishes at present. The first is to catch Dustless, the bastard boy. Thinking of Dustless's wicked smile, Death immediately gnashed her teeth and immediately continued, as for the next 2 wishes, I hope to form a special team to deal with the night attack. The other wish is to fall in love, and there is already a suitable candidate. Fall in love? Minister Ernest and the Emperor looked at each other, and they were both shocked. After dozens of seconds, they stared at Death tightly. General Death actually wants to fall in love, and there is a suitable candidate. Who is so lucky to get the general's pity? Although Minister Ernest said so, in his heart, he felt sorry for the person Death liked. Chapter 1620. Who is it? Death was in a trance when she heard the words, and immediately explained, although there is a gap between that guy and the person I like, he is also the closest. Who on earth is so powerful? The young emperor was also interested. The person who could make Death favor, the whole world's population would be curious about him. I have said it before. Death said meaningfully, that guy is very strong, and he is not from the imperial capital like me. He has a big goal and is ambitious at the same time. Although he is not suitable in some other aspects, it doesn't matter. It is God's blessing that I can find that guy. Death saw through it quite clearly. There was no perfect human being in this world, and everything could not be changed according to one's own logical thinking. You said it. Minister Ornat was also surprised when he heard this. After recalling what Death said, he said loudly, is it that Dustless? That guy is a member of the night raid. The young emperor frowned. However, Death did not pay attention to him. Her eyes just looked at the big guy next to him. Minister Ornat was the emperor's father. He was more like a father than a father. Yes, it is him. Death nodded and immediately said without concealing, however, I just intend to raise that guy as a pet. Dustless left a deep impression on me. It is difficult to forget him. That guy humiliated me again and again. I must catch him back and feed him. Since she was young, Death had always put a collar on others. Only last time was an exception. Not to mention that she suffered a loss in the hands of Dustless, she was also put on a collar by him. It was unbearable. Death was always thinking about revenge against Dustless. I see. Minister Ornat was surprised after hearing it, and he was too lazy to continue talking nonsense with Death. Once this woman decided on something, no one could pull her back. Then congratulations to the general for your success. Minister Ornat knew that his denial could not change the will of Death. In this case, it was better to sell a favor to Death so that the alliance between them could be more consolidated. Then we must capture that guy. The young emperor also agreed. Since the honorable father had spoken, as a good son, he naturally had to agree to it as well. Although the two of them were not related by blood, there was no doubt that Osnat's relationship with the emperor was even stronger than that of a father. The emperor would agree to all of Osnat's conditions. In another direction. Poochie. In the pitch-black room, a large amount of blood suddenly appeared in the air and covered the floor. Looking around, the entire room was filled with corpses. They had all been killed in an extremely cruel manner. They had all been cut in half at the waist. TSK, this weapon is really scary. Dustless quietly looked at the scissors in Hill's hand and couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. No matter who it was, if they were hit by this thing, they could end up being cut in half. This group of people had all died in such a miserable way. Retreat, Mine and Hill. Glancing at the pink-haired girl, Dustless took the lead to leave the smoky room. Corpses had been piled up everywhere, and they were all killed mercilessly by Dustless and others. This guy dares to order us too. This newcomer is too arrogant. He has no rules at all. Facing us two veterans, he should try to please us. Mine hummed and said, deliberately raising her voice to let Dustless hear. Dustless walked away. Even if he heard it, he turned a deaf ear to Mine's complaints. After joining the night raid for so many days, he had heard her complaints and had become immune. Is that so? Hill's naturally dull little face showed a meaningful smile. Then you didn't refuse his order. Hill, you, figure out your position for me. The two of us are good teammates in the same trench. Mine blushed after being stunned for a moment. Unconsciously, her teammates were all turned against her. Whiz whiz whiz. Just at this time, Dustless suddenly stopped and looked at the forest on the left side with a cold face. There was a cold gaze looking at them. Is there an enemy? Hill and Mine made a fighting posture. They looked in the direction of Dustless, and a girl in the Special Zones Guard uniform came into view. It's really her. Seeing this person appear, Dustless was not surprised. What should come will come. In the original work, Hill was killed by this guy ruthlessly. I spend a lot of time waiting every day, and finally you are here, Night Raid. After the voice fell, the good-looking girl immediately turned into an evil spirit. Her distorted face was full of horror and killing intent. A surging chill rushed to Dustless and others. This person was a member of the Special Zones Guard, Selu Ubietas. You are a group of evil people, you must be punished with justice. Selu Ubietas came out of the dark woods with a white puppy. Dustless knew that it was the Taigu of Selu Ubietas, the demon beast transformed into 100-armed giant, the dog that had been called Xiaoka. It looked harmless on the surface, but it was actually a very ferocious existence. Is this woman's head broken? The situation is not clear. The current situation is 3v1. She has no chance to win. Chapter 1621. Is there something wrong with this woman's head? She hasn't figured out the situation. The current situation is 3v1, she has no chance to win. Mine sneered coldly, this stupid woman didn't even seem to figure out the basic situation. The people who were at an absolute disadvantage were not her and Hill, but Seleucid Ubiquitas. Seleucid Ubiquitas heard the words and slightly raised his mouth, revealing a ferocious arc. There is no weakness or advantage in punishing evil, I just need to annihilate all of you. Seleucid Ubiquita's mouth opened, a dark muzzle was exposed, and a dazzling bullet was shot from the front. Bang bang bang. Several shots were shot in succession, the dense fire was shot to Dustless and other two people. Phew phew phew. Hill and Mine, who realized the danger, retreated, and only Dustless was like a stone, standing still as if it had nothing to do with him. Go to hell. Seleucid Ubiquitas felt pity. Although he was a little disappointed that two people ran away, it was not bad to kill one of the members of the night raid. Bang bang bang. Dustless's body was penetrated by the bullets, there were more than a dozen holes, his heart was destroyed, he would definitely die. Idiot, why don't you dodge? Mine saw the wounds on Dustless's body, her tone suddenly increased several times, and the Taigu in her hand shone with a huge dazzling light of destruction. Boom boom boom. A ray of destructive light shot out, it was several times stronger than usual. Dustless's death was a big blow to mine. After all, Dustless had saved her. Phew phew phew. The thick light came to him. Seleucid Ubiquitas was shocked. He quickly said to his Taigu, "Little Ku, block it for me." Ow 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 ow. A strange sound came out from the mouth of this strange creature, then his body became countless times bigger, revealing his horrible and gloomy appearance. He blocked in front of Seleucid Ubiquitas like a meat shield. Boom boom boom. However, mine, who was angry, was also much more powerful. She instantly destroyed this biotype Taigu. Poochie. There was a huge hole in Coco's abdomen. Even her organs had been completely crushed. The hole was large enough for a person to walk through. Little Ku. You bastard, how dare you? Celia Ubiquita's face was distorted even more. The black hole in her mouth was exposed again, and she unceremoniously shot a bullet at mine. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The dense firepower net of bullets came head-on, and there was no way to escape. Mine was going to be shot into a sieve. Damn it. Mine scolded secretly. She was sweating. She couldn't escape from both sides. There was no shelter around her. She was about to be shot. Am I going to die? Mine's face was full of unwillingness. She was not afraid of death, but if she could, Mine hoped to drag Cyril Ubiquitas to be buried with her. After all, Dustless had helped her and saved her life. If she couldn't help him take revenge, she would have no face to meet Dustless in the underworld. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this time, a black shadow stood in front of Mine without hesitation, protecting her like a shield. Gil? Staring at the purple girl in front of her, Mine was very moved. Clang 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 clang. Gil held the scissor-shaped Taigu and blocked it in front of her. All the bullets fell on the Taigu. Because Gil's Taigu was extremely hard, it could be used as a shield. Damn it. Celia Ubiquitas saw the situation and scolded. Looking at the two people who were close, she felt extremely unlucky. After all, she almost killed Mine. At the same time, she hated Gil. Since you like to meddle in other people's business, go to hell. Celia Ubiquitas screamed with a distorted face. She opened her mouth and shot countless bullets at the same time. Bang bang bang. The result was the same as before, the bullet attack was blocked. Your good luck seems to be used up. I am going to avenge that guy now. Mine stepped forward. The muzzle of the Taigu pumpkin had been aimed at Celia Ubiquitas. Huh. When Celia Ubiquitas saw this, he revealed a devilish smile and said coldly, "Before that, please take a look behind the two of you." Gil and Mine were both stunned. They turned their heads at the same time. A black shadow was staring at them with murderous intent. Ow 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 ow. Celia Ubiquitas' Taigu roared like a beast. Its body became dozens of times bigger. Then his strong and powerful big hand caught Mine and Gil instantly. Damn it. All this happened so suddenly that Gil and Mine were still in a daze. When they turned around, Taigu, who had become bigger, had already caught the two. Ha ha ha. I finally succeeded. Justice triumphed over evil. The unscrupulous laughter lingered in the black night sky and did not disappear for a long time. Celia Ubiquitas' cheeks raised a smile of victory. It was a great victory to kill 3 members of the night raid. Master. I finally avenged you. I successfully killed 3 members of the night raid. Damn it, Celia Ubiquitas is so despicable and insidious. He deliberately let the biotype Taigu pretend to be dead. In fact, he was looking for opportunities to attack us. Damn it, we were fooled. Mine struggled hard, but found that it did not work at all. The strength of the Taigu was too strong. Gil could not escape, let alone Mine, who was weaker. The two looked pale for a while. Taigu, crush these 2 evil criminals for me. Chapter 1622. The biotype Taigu increased its strength. Mine and Gil immediately screamed in pain. The two were sweating, and the pain made their faces as pale as paper. Crush them to avenge the master. Celia Ubiquitas, whose cheeks were distorted, roared like a crazy ghost. A few days ago, the night attack assassinated her master, Captain Oka of the Special Zones Police Force. Therefore, Celia Ubiquitas hated the night attack. She could not wait to drink their blood and swallow their bones. She came out every night, and today, she finally encountered the night attack. Oh, the biotype Taiga nodded slightly after receiving the order, then it was angry and increased the power output. When it was about to completely crush the two women, a sharp light broke the situation. Poochie. Poochie. The light penetrated the arms of the biotype Taigu. Two crisp sounds were heard in succession. Coco's arms fell, Gil and mine were able to escape from the cage, and they were relaxed. Who dares to stop the justice from defeating the evil? Unforgivable. When he saw this, Celia Ubiquitas flew into a rage, and his sharp tone became several times louder. He was like a malicious spirit that had come to claim his life, and his scarlet eye sockets were filled with a bloody glow. The veins of blood that were like spiderwebs spread throughout his entire eye sockets, and his entire body was filled with a raging and ominous aura. Everyone's gaze swept over. Under the night sky, that faintly discernible thin figure was exceptionally conspicuous. You are dustless? Mine and Gil were even more anxious. They were grateful to the savior, but when they saw the lazy face, the two women were stunned. Don't show such an unexpected expression. This is the imperial capital, and we are attacking at night. The people who can save you are naturally our own people. Will those Empire soldiers be kind enough to save you too? Dustless asked calmly as if nothing happened, and at the same time, he glanced at the bloody biotype Taiga Coco, and whispered, "It is just a tool, but it can also regenerate quickly, and even pretend to be dead. It is very capable, and it is so humane." On the surface, Dustless was praising, but in fact, his tone was as cold as frost, and he flicked a light from his finger, and it went straight to the biotype Taigu. Laser. A dazzling light shot out and flew to Coco's head. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the night sky shone brightly. Following that, a bright flame soared into the sky. Coco's head was instantly destroyed, charred by the scorching wave of fire. You bastard. Celia Ubiquitas's eyes were about to burst. Originally, he hated Dustless to the bone. According to the news from his death, he was the culprit who killed Oka. Now he also crushed her Taigu. The anger in her heart had already reached an intolerable level. This guy has already been twisted. There's no saving him. Dustless's face was as cold as ice as his fingertips glowed with a high-density light. His finger was aimed at the head of Celia Ubiquitas. Although this guy looked pretty good, it did not mean that Dustless would be compassionate. Dustless was not a man who could not move when he saw a beauty. It was even more impossible for him to be merciful to Celia Ubiquitas. This kind of person was brainwashed, and her mind was poisoned. Only by sending her to heaven could she be saved. Go to hell, remember, the person who killed you is called Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After the voice fell, Dustless flicked a dazzling light from his finger. I won't be killed so easily, and even if I die, I will drag you, this group of evil criminals, to be buried with me. You evil people all deserve to die. Celia Ubiquitas roared like a madman. He hated Dustless and the others to the core. His resentment had reached an unbelievable level. He couldn't wait to drag Dustless and the others down to hell. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the face of the light, Celia Ubiquitas' reaction was very agile. She actually came over miraculously and opened her mouth to shoot a lot of bullets. Bang bang bang. Dustless's body was penetrated again, but nothing happened. The damaged wound was quickly repaired by the ability of the glinting fruit. Damn it, damn it. Why does justice lose to this evil person? Clenching her fists, Celia Ubiquitas was unwilling to give up. Why? This kind of shallow reason seems to be very simple. Slowly walking towards Celia Ubiquitas, looking down at the frustrated girl, Dustless said coldly, because your justice is not as strong as my strength. The so-called justice is determined by the winner, so I am the winner, I am the justice. Instead, you are an evil person. Then I will destroy you with brute force. I don't care so much, Xiaoka, use that trick. Celia Ubiquitas glanced at the biotype Tigus Xiaoka with madness in his eyes. His words were determined to destroy everything. Oh. You still have tricks? Faint ripples appeared in the calm eyes. Dustless whispered, such a positive tone, you seem to have the despair of death, which slightly makes me look at you differently. Ao. After receiving Celia's order, the biotype Tigus Xiaoka immediately took the lead. Then he seemed to have taken hormones, his body expanded several times in an instant, and his white body also changed greatly. Instead, it was replaced by blood-black hair, and the eyeballs that were as big as copper were also full of rage. Xiaoka's strength will increase after using fury, this time you. Celia regained her confidence and said proudly to Dustless, but she did not know that this guy had disappeared. You are just a so-so. The next moment, when Dustless appeared again, his feet stepped on Xiaoka's head. Chapter 1623. What a fast speed. Gil and Mine looked at each other, their expressions were a little numb. It was not that they had never seen the market, but Dustless was too fast, and he disappeared in a flash. When he appeared again, he had already appeared on the head of the biological dog-type Taigu. Dustless, this guy. I thought he was dead just now, and I was sad for him once. Now it seems that he is still alive. I really don't deserve it. Mine squeezed out the crystal water stains from the corner of her eyes, and she was about to cry. Although she was dissatisfied with Dustless on the mouth, her expression was smiling, obviously she did not mean what she said. Xiaoka, crush him for me. Being provoked by an evil person again and again, Seleucid Ubiquitas, who could not bear it, had a face as black as coal, and he could not help but completely explode. Ao. The violent dog-type Tigus Xiaoka roared, looking up at Dustless on the head, and grabbed him with his big hand. Puchi. The dog-type Tigus Xiaoka once again grabbed the body of Dustless, but before he had time to be happy, he suddenly found that the texture he caught was not right. It was good that he caught Dustless, but it was no different from catching the air. His body was very ethereal, and there was no substance. Buzz buzz buzz, a large number of dense flashes were condensed at the foot again. Dustless glanced at the dog-type Tigus Xiaoka coldly, and then the small foot that was raised high did not hesitate to fall. Speed is power. Have you been kicked by the speed of light? Speed of light kick. The shining big foot that was like a layer of gold fell on the head of the dog-type Tigus Xiaoka mercilessly, his head suddenly sunk. Kakaka. Especially the most terrible place of the eyes, it left a burning footprint directly. Boom boom boom. The dog-type creature Tigus Xiaoka was kicked away by Dustless for dozens of meters away in a moment. The body smashed several big trees in succession, even the ground was pulled out of a long ditch. Every part of his body was badly mutilated. Ao. Although he was out of breath, the dog-type Tigus Xiaoka still stood up tenaciously, the bloody eyes like a meatball stared at Silver without slowing down. It's useless. Seeing that Coco was still standing up, Celia Ubiquitas heaved a sigh of relief. The power of that kick just now was really shocking. She even suspected that it could destroy a mountain with one kick. The biological Taigu can be restored by any attack. After being trampled on a few times, Sailor Ubiquita's arrogance and confidence returned to normal. Tisk, tsk. You can recover from any attack? I advise you to speak less of such arrogant and ignorant words in the future. It will only make you seem more ignorant. Dustless retorted with a sneer. What do you mean? Celia Ubiquitas was stunned. She stared at Dustless unhappily. She understood that there was a hidden meaning in his words. To put it simply, this dog-shaped Taigu is still alive, it is completely my kindness. After all, I am also a sensitive person. You have a deep relationship with this dog. It would be too heartless to kill it instantly. You can't talk about the old days, I am not the kind of heartless man. Dustless continued to explain casually, that's why I let the two of you fight for a while longer and communicate with each other before you die. You should thank me for being merciful. Dustless said frankly, not caring about the bulging blue veins on Cyril Ubiquitas's forehead. Poochie. Gil and Mine couldn't help but spurt out their saliva. They stared at Dustless gloomily. This guy was too annoying. The meaning of these words was that if you could still breathe, you should thank me for not killing you. Little dog, tear him up for me. Celia Ubiquitas ordered with a green face. If she listened to Dustless's nonsense, she would be annoyed to death. Ow 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 ow. The dog-shaped taigu that was accused shook all over. It was like a whistling hurricane. Its speed was so fast that it was difficult to catch it with human eyes. It's so fast. Mine and Gil whispered in shock. Such a huge body, it moved so fast that they could not see it at all. This was also the fundamental reason why they were caught just now. It's so slow. This fleeting speed fell into the eyes of Dustless, but it was as slow as a turtle crawling, there was no highlight. Phew phew phew. Suddenly there was a fierce hurricane behind him. Dustless did not even turn his head. He did not need to look to know that it was the dog-shaped taigu. Its movement was too big, it was difficult to not find it. To assassinate a person, first of all, it must be done quietly. Like this, the evil spirit was all over the sky, the movement was too fierce, it could easily locate the position of the enemy. Shinra Tensei. His closed eyes abruptly opened, and an incomparably violent repulsive force erupted out. Kakaka. Because it was too close to Dustless, the dog-shaped taigu was also affected, but its body was not bounced off, but it was directly crushed by the violent repulsion. One of the glass-like spheres was also crushed. Isn't this a thorough death? The core is also destroyed, the dog will definitely die. Taking a glance at Cyril Ubiquitas, Dustless asked indifferently, you should also sleep forever. Celia Ubiquitas's heart was completely distorted. Her whole body was transformed into a weapon. It was impossible to tame her. In this case, he could only destroy her ruthlessly. Tsukuyami. Dustless glanced at Celia Ubiquitas gently, the majestic spiritual power invaded her mind. He did not torture her, he just destroyed her nervous system and annihilated it instantly. Celia Ubiquitas's eyes were empty, and she immediately looked at the deep void with infatuation. Then she left the world unwillingly with relief. Chapter 1624. Is that taiga dog finished? What a pity. Mine and Gil sighed. In addition to the necessary task of assassination, the night raid also had the secondary job of collecting taigu. The taiga that killed Zank a while ago was sent to the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. The taiga of Celia Ubiquitas did not even leave the body, and there was only a large pool of blood on the ground. It's good that you are fine. Hill revealed a naturally silly smile. His gaze when looking at Dustless had an additional hint of strangeness. The targets that should be eliminated have been eliminated, let's retreat. Stretching out, Dustless yawned and took the lead to disappear into the darkness. You don't have the demeanor of a peerless master at all. Mine shook her head and immediately glanced at Hill. She just caught the obscure expression. Although she didn't know what it meant, Mine didn't know why she felt uncomfortable in her heart. At the moment, in the palace in another place. 3 beasts, I have a new task for you. On the ground covered with green grass, Isteth stared at the 3 people who were half kneeling in front of her and explained, recently, many people are rebelling against the minister. You go to pretend to be the night raid and kill all the civil officials who talk nonsense. Understood, Lady Isteth. The 3 people all answered respectfully. Well, you can go back. Isteth waved her white and tender arms and turned her head with a little tiredness. Recently, she had been crazily training herself, and the time to sleep could be counted with fingers. That. Lady Isteth. At this time, Leva, one of the 3 beasts, suddenly said, Lady Isteth, are you going to deal with Dustless? We can finally get rid of the shame. Not only Leva was very excited, but the rest of Nu and Didos were also very excited. After all, Dustless had seriously destroyed their physical and mental health, and they had not recovered until now. Very good, I can feel your high will. Esteth smiled and nodded, and immediately her eyes dimmed. However, let's forget about Dustless for the time being. If we go to trouble him, the people who will be killed should be us. Esteth remembered the battle with Dustless and whispered, but it is also because of that guy. My strength has improved a lot now, and the old stubborn guy also promised to deal with him with me. Old stubborn guy? Leva and the other two were all stunned. Soon after, they said in surprise in unison, could it be the other strongest general of the Empire, General Bude? If he is willing to join forces with Esteth, it will be easy to take down Dustless. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Those people in the imperial capital have been very busy recently. At the base of the night raid, the boss Najenda carefully read the information sent, frowning deeply. Her expression was very cautious and serious, and even clearly worried. As for the other members of the night raid, they were eating breakfast. Does Esteth want to force us to come out and kill us all? After a while, boss Najenda put out the cigarette in her hand, showing a headache. Recently, many civil officials of the Empire have been killed. When they left the night raid leaflets and wanted to pour dirty water on us. Dustless recalled the incident while eating breakfast, and at the same time, he did not forget to give a thumbs up to Scarlet Eye. This guy was really good at cooking meat. It must be Esteth's doing. She wants to force us out and kill us in one fell swoop. Leonai nodded in agreement while wolfing down the food. But, Dustless stared at Tatsumi and Bullet, who were still training outside the window, with a meaningful smile at the corner of his mouth, and a raging light flashed in the depths of his eyes. I can take this opportunity to kill Bullet, so that this guy won't meddle in other people's business and hinder me every time. When he planned to kill Tatsumi a few times, Bullet who was in the way often came out to mess things up. He could use Esteth's hands to kill this stinky bug. We should stop Esteth immediately during the night raid, otherwise, more and more civil officials will be killed by her. Those civil officials with conscience are the elites of the country in the future. They must not be lost. Dustless suddenly stood up and said loudly in an impassioned tone. However, when Dustless's words fell, the scene was silent, and they all looked at him. Dustless, are you sick? Scarlet Eye couldn't help but say anxiously, if you are sick, you should give up this mission. Everyone will give you more rewards. You usually don't care about those civil officials. Why are you so concerned about this incident? You must be sick. Blinking her eyes, Scarlet Eye stared at Dustless with concern. At the same time, she put her forehead on Dustless's forehead. After feeling that his body temperature was normal, she strangely said to herself, it seems that you don't have a fever, ahem. It's my responsibility to protect those civil officials. Dustless patted his chest awkwardly. Scarlet Eye probably thought that his brain was damaged. Dustless usually avoided when he heard about protecting those civil officials. He often pretended to be sick or refused for various reasons. This time, he took the initiative to attack, which really made the people of the night raid feel puzzled. I can't say that I intend to use this opportunity to kill Bullet. Dustless was secretly depressed by the strange eyes of the crowd. He simply chose to learn from Leonette and eat, ignoring the strange eyes of others. Chapter 1625. For the strange eyes of several people, Dustless simply ignored them, and then began to plan how to kill Tatsumi and Bullet. These two bugs were wandering around all day, which was really disgusting. Don't talk about those boring trifles, there is a big event that needs to be dealt with now. Although the boss Najenda was also quite strange, she did not ask much. Although everyone was a killer and had to obey her orders on the surface, everyone had their own privacy, and there was no need to delve into it. According to the latest intelligence, Esteth must have a new plan to attack us at night. Najenda sighed gloomily, knowing that this was Esteth's conspiracy, but she still got involved. this feeling was particularly uncomfortable. Recently, there is a cruise ship with civil servants, which is also the target of his death. There are many civil servants with conscience on the cruise ship, and there are also enemies of Minister Ernest. It is estimated that his death will not let go of the target easily, so, this mission, let me, Tatsumi, and Bullet carry it out together. Before the boss Najenda finished speaking, Dustless directly interrupted her speech. 3 people? Najenda frowned slightly, with a little hesitation, and finally decided, his death is aggressive, and she will not stop until she achieves her goal. Maybe she will send a lot of masters to sneak in. You 3 are too few, so this mission will be completed by Tatsumi and Bullet, Dustless and Akame. Why does Akame participate in this kind of thing every time? Dustless was secretly depressed. According to the nature of Akame, would she let him kill Bullet? The answer was definitely impossible. Although he had a good relationship with Akame, Akame valued the so-called companions very much, and would never allow Dustless to kill the so-called companions. Let's wait and see. Looking up, he stared at Bullet and Tatsumi, who were sweating outside the window. He saw that the two were talking and laughing happily, and the most ridiculous thing was that Bullet showed his love to Tatsumi from time to time. Dustless felt goosebumps all over his body. Originally, this matter has nothing to do with you, but you have to participate in it. You can't blame me for being ruthless, Bulla. Dustless muttered in his heart. He was only targeting Tatsumi, but Bulla and Tatsumi had a good relationship and often hindered Dustless, so he could only kill this eyesore. By the way, when you sneak onto the cruise ship, make sure to dress up a little. The boss Najenda reminded, whether it was Dustless, Akame, Tatsumi or Bullet, the 4 of them were wanted by the whole city. Dressing up could save unnecessary trouble. On the sparkling surface of the sea, a huge cruise ship was slowly moving forward. Celebrities from all over the world were gathered on the ship. At first glance, there were prominent figures everywhere. This is the first time I've dressed up like this. On the cruise ship where people from all over the world gathered, Dustless and Akame stood together. The 2 of them were dressed very differently from before. They wore matching couple outfits. Wu Chen was wearing a black tuxedo. His slightly messy long hair was specially cut short this time. His deep eyes were as dazzling as the bright moon. They were embedded in his eye sockets and shone brightly. Dustless also respected Najenda's script and tried his best to act as Akame's husband. He had an elegant smile on his face. When he met people who passed by him, he would show a charming smile. Ridiculous, why can Dustless and Akame pretend to be husband and wife and sneak onto the ship, but I have to be responsible for doing odd jobs? Damn, it's really a bad year. Tatsumi, who was wiping the table in the distance, was like a jealous jar that had been knocked over, and he was complaining to himself. Don't be discouraged, Tatsumi. At this time, a stranger patted Tatsumi's shoulder, and he was shocked. Tatsumi looked around, but there was no one around. Is it my illusion? After looking around twice, Tatsumi retracted his gaze. Stupid Tatsumi, look clearly, it's me, Bullet. He patted Tatsumi's shoulder again, and the mysterious voice sounded again. Brother? Tatsumi was stunned when he heard the words, and he looked around with his eyes wide open. Don't look with your eyes, feel with your heart. This is one of the abilities of my ghost haunting, it can be transparent. Bullet explained in a low voice. Is this the Taigu? It's also powerful. Tatsumi suddenly showed an envious expression when he heard the words. Such a powerful ability was rare in the world. Tatsumi saw it and remembered it in his mind. By the way, when Dustless and Akame sneaked onto the ship, why didn't anyone check them? When I just said that I was a handyman, I went through a lot of interrogation. Tatsumi complained with dissatisfaction, with an unlucky expression, looking at Akame and Dustless who were dancing in the distance. He was envious and jealous. They were all members of the night raid, why was the gap so big? Dustless and Akame pretended to be husband and wife, while Tatsumi miserably pretended to be a cook and a handyman to sneak in. They looked like husband and wife. Leaning against the cabin, he looked straight at Wu Chen and Chi Tong. Wu Chen was elegant and graceful, while Qi Tong had dressed up meticulously. Her appearance was even more soul-stirring. Her skin was fair and beautiful, and her facial features were flawless, like a masterpiece carved by the heavens. The two of them displayed their superb acting skills, and the people around them were less wary of them. Damn it. I'm always the one who gets into trouble. Why do I have to team up with my brother? He is gay. Looking at Bullet, who stared at himself affectionately, Tatsumi almost vomited blood. People were really annoying. Chapter 1626. Bullet's eyes were deep and bright, filled with an invisible flame. He stared at the short Tatsumi, and Bullet's eyes were enough to melt him easily. Seeing this, Tatsumi's heart beat faster, and he looked up at Bullet in horror. He used to think that Dustless was dangerous, but compared with Bullet, Dustless was too cute and kind in some aspects. A long and noble tune rang out in the air. Following that, the previously bustling ship instantly became abnormally noisy and filled with terrified voices. Damn, my head hurts, what's going on? My head hurts too. Damn it, could it be Minister Ernest's subordinate? Everyone, cover your ears quickly, don't listen to this melody. The tourists on the ship suddenly screamed in horror. The screams were full of endless pain, like headless flies bumping around. Everyone showed a painful expression and was very sad. Plop. Some people couldn't resist the pain, and they directly jumped into the water and chose to kill themselves. This is. At the same time, on the other side, Qi Tong and Dustless also deliberately fainted on the ground. Qi Tong's whole body was tightly pressed on Dustless. Because of the distance, Dustless inevitably touched some places that should not be touched, and so did Qi Tong. It's just acting, you don't have to be so professional. Dustless opened his eyes, and half of Qi Tong's beautiful face was directly pressed on Dustless's neck, and he could feel the hot touch. Don't talk, continue to pretend to be unconscious, and when those people come out, we will ambush them unexpectedly. Qi Tong opened her eyes and glanced at Dustless, then closed them again, and then pretended to be dead on Dustless's neck, and did not move, which was very professional. It's a waste of a professional like you to not make movies in this world. Dustless stared at Qi Tong, dumbfounded. Although this girl said it calmly and simply, her tone seemed that she did not care about being taken advantage of by Dustless at all. However, because Qi Tong's whole body was pressed on him, Dustless could still feel Qi Tong's accelerated heartbeat, and in fact, he was also very nervous. What a pity, it was undeniable that Scarlet Eye's plan wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad. He deliberately pretended to be unconscious and waited for the enemy to relax before dealing a fatal blow. However, in this world, no matter what time it was, there would always be some troublemakers. Damn it, what's going on? Where did this melody come from? It's so powerful that it's swaying when it walks. Tatsumi covered his head. His head was also painful as if it was being torn apart. He was dizzy and walked around like a dizzy duck. He couldn't even distinguish the most basic directions. There's actually someone who can persevere. Not bad. I thought that all the people on this ship would be wiped out. I didn't expect that there would be a fish that escaped the net. Not bad. However, it is also because you are extraordinary that it shows that you are not simple. Kid, you should be the one who attacked at night. The three beast men walked out of the cabin. The one who spoke was one of the three beast men, the former General Riva. But now he had become Istetha's lackey. Did the three of you do it? The melody stopped. Tatsumi looked at the three people in front of him with a pale face. His shining eyes were dotted with stars. Oh, do you still have the strength to talk? It's really extraordinary. One of the three beast men, the blonde kid, was called Nyo. She looked at the unyielding Tatsumi with surprise and said, "You can still burst out with such a strong will. You are definitely not an ordinary human. There is no doubt that you are a member of the night raid. With the existence of Tatsumi, I know that your plan will fail." Dustless ridiculed Scarlet Eye with a smile. His voice was as soft as a mosquito and only Scarlet Eye could hear it. Is it? Hearing this, Scarlet Eye's performance was mediocre. She looked at Tatsumi, who wanted to fight with the three beast men, and suddenly showed an expression of appreciation. Tatsumi is not as weak as you think. Then you watch carefully. Dustless also stared at Tatsumi, who was confronting the three beast men with interest. He really didn't know where this kid got the courage to 1v3. You scum, disappear. Tatsumi held a wide and thick sword in both hands. Immediately, he stomped his feet on the ground. His body suddenly jumped up and swept to the sky. Finally, he slashed at the three beast men, with the force of falling from the sky. Humph. Leva snorted when he saw the situation. He immediately rushed out and shouted, "Where did this brat come from? Go home and play house. You are full of flaws." Bang bang bang. As soon as his voice fell, the miserable Tatsumi suddenly flew out. He was kicked more than 10 meters away by Leva. Tatsumi's head was on the ground, and his buttocks were sticking out miserably. He was in an extremely embarrassing situation. Poochie. Dustless, who couldn't help laughing, glanced at Scarlet Eye. This guy was also disappointed. Scarlet Eye originally saw that Tatsumi used to practice so hard. His strength must have improved, but according to the current situation, the essence of Tatsumi's embroidered pillow had not changed. This kid looks frustrated. At first glance, he is the kind of person who will die early. It is useless to catch him. Nyo, quickly send this eyesore clown to heaven. Looking at his face, I know that he is a real waste. Leva ordered with great disdain. Tatsumi was born with the expression of a passerby. Even Leva couldn't extract any information from him. Chapter 1627. You know you are useless just by looking at your face? This sentence was like a nightmare that could not be dismissed, lingering in Tatsumi's mind for a long time. What's the use of looking at my face? What's more, how do you know that I am possessed by the god of misfortune? Tatsumi's self-esteem was challenged by Leva. He quickly stood up and said sarcastically, "With your level, the elder brother can easily solve it." Elder brother? Is it the guy Dustless? A cunning look flashed through his eyes. Leva asked calmly, deliberately stimulating Tatsumi's nerves. You are not even worthy to carry shoes for Dustless. After all, we have fought with him. I still feel that it is a dream to be alive. My elder brother is Bullet. Tatsumi retorted with a red face. He and Dustless had deep resentment. How could he recognize such a person as his elder brother? Didos knew. It seems that in addition to this guy, there are other people on the ship. You two go to search carefully. They are likely to be disguised. Remember to touch everyone's face. Leva said to the other two beasts. He originally felt strange. Tatsumi was so weak. How could they send such a small person to attack at night? There must be other helpers. Is this Tatsumi's head broken by the door? Dustless, who deliberately pretended to be dead, said speechlessly. He had already seen Nu and Didos coming over. It was only a matter of time to remove his and Akame's disguise. There are indeed some problems. This time Akame also stood on Dustless's side. She did not defend Tatsumi. Tatsumi's behavior was clearly to cheat his teammates. Let's do it, Akame. Glancing at Akame, who was lying on his body, Dustless's eyes flashed a cold light. Do it quickly. Akame nodded. Under Dustless's incredible and surprised gaze, Akame's right arm slowly stretched to her trousers, then she directly untied it and took out her taigu, Murasame. I had no choice. This banquet doesn't allow anyone to bring weapons. I had no choice but to come up with another plan. Chi Tong looked at Dustless in embarrassment. But there's no need to hide it in your pants, Dustless complained in his heart. He was too lazy to dwell on this issue. Let's do it. They're coming. Looking closely, Didos and Nia were gradually approaching Dustless and Scarlet Eye. Clang 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 clang. Chi Tong suddenly unsheathed his long saber, and a cold light shot out. Seeing the right time, Chi Tong turned into an afterimage and shot out, crossing a distance of several meters in an instant. Pucci. Didos, one of the three beast men, was killed by Scarlet Pupil in an instant. Swish. Swish. Chi Tong did not stop there. Instead, he looked at another target, Ni Wu. You want to kill me? No way. The death of his teammate gave Ni Wu a chance to catch his breath. At the same time, he caught sight of Chi Tong pouncing on him. He immediately used his special flute to block the incoming attack. Clang 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 clang. Sparks splashed in the void. Chi Tong and Ni Wu were entangled. Although Ni Wu was prepared, he was still sent flying by the brute force of Chi Tong's attack. Bang bang. Crack crack. Ni Wu's body slammed heavily on the cabin. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. This guy is so strong. Although Chi Tong had injured Ni Wu, he obviously did not have enough strength to kill him. However, this was normal. After all, Chi Tong was not a strength-type player like Bullet. It seems like I don't need to do anything. Seeing this, Dustless decisively chose to continue playing dead. Creak. However, at this moment, the soldiers hidden in the cabin all rushed out. An extremely unexpected figure suddenly walked out with his head held high. This guy is here too? Seeing the majestic figure with golden hair, Dustless frowned slightly. This person had a majestic appearance. His face was meticulous, and his face was full of majesty. He looked very domineering. General Bud? Chi Tong's eyes were full of caution and spoke out the identity of this person. The person in front of him was another great general with the same name as his death, Bud. His strength was beyond doubt. Since he could sit in the position of a great general and have the same name as his death, he must be a strong man with enough strength. However, what Dustless cared about was not this. Blinking his eyes, Dustless's closed eyes opened again, and there was a puzzled expression in his eyes. Why is this old guy here? So after that. Then he thought about it a little and felt relieved. General Bud used his own power to protect a lot of conscientious civil officials. These people are probably his people. It's understandable to protect these civil officials. They are all political enemies of Minister Ernest. Dustless, who understood, was relieved. He stared at General Bud with a slightly playful expression. The current situation seems to be extremely unfavorable for Chi Tong and others. The appearance of General Bud changed the whole situation at once. Where is Bullet? If he doesn't come out, Tatsumi will die. Observation hockey quietly spread out. Dustless tried to find Bullet's breath, and soon this guy floated into his eyes. He was quite surprised to find that this guy was beside him. This old guy isn't trying to assassinate me, is he? Curious, Dustless did not take the initiative to talk to Tatsumi, but continued to play dead, as if he saw nothing. However, Bullet did not buy it. Why are you deliberately targeting Tatsumi? We should be companions. The voice full of dissatisfaction rang in Dustless's ears. The voice was so low that only he could barely hear it. Others could not hear Bullet's hoarse voice. Chapter 1628. When Bullet's words fell, Dustless opened his eyes. His eyes were slightly surprised. He sighed at the greatness of gay love. He didn't expect that Bullet would fall out with him for Tatsumi. In fact, there is no reason. I just feel uncomfortable looking at that naive kid all day long. Dustless said in answer that made Bullet angry. This was also a common problem of Dustless. People with protagonist aura were often very annoying. He always sneered at the kind of thinking that his own idea was right and others were wrong. Ha! Bullet, who was stunned by Dustless's nonsensical answer, was furious. Dustless, for such a ridiculous answer, you deliberately targeted Tatsumi? You even almost killed him several times. You think it's ridiculous? Wu Chen lazily glanced at Bullet and then shook his head gently. Sure enough, we're not on the same path. I have nothing to say to you. Since we're not on the same path, I won't see you off. Same. Glancing coldly at Dustless, Bullet flicked his sleeves and left. It seemed that he was going to find trouble with Leva. At the same time, Bullet's resolute and decisive declaration echoed in Dustless's ears. No matter what, I will protect Tatsumi. Don't ask me why. Just because he called me Big Brother just now. This guy is looking for death. Is he deliberately making an enemy of me? Staring at Bullet's back, if possible, Dustless really didn't want to kill him. Although this guy was gay, he was still a good person. Why did he have to protect Tatsumi, the jinx? It's time for the disguise mission to end. Staring at the robust figure approaching Scarlet Pupil, it was General Bude. His majestic height was several times larger than Scarlet Pupil. It was obvious who was at a disadvantage. It's really sad. Geniuses like you can become the future pillars of the Empire. General Bude walked in front of Scarlet Pupil with great oppression. Seeing Scarlet Pupil's firm eyes, he smacked his lips and sighed very sentimentally, but his eyes were full of killing intent when he looked at Scarlet Pupil. If people like you aren't killed as soon as possible, you'll be a huge problem in the future. Great General Budo restrained his emotions, and they were replaced by endless coldness. Cunning old fox. Scarlet Eye snorted warily. Perhaps Grand General Bude already knew that the three beasts had infiltrated the ship. The reason why he didn't rush to stop the three beasts from killing the civil officials was because he had the same plan as the three beasts, to lure the night raid out to court death. It's not that I'm cunning, it's just that you guys are too immature. With a look of devastation in his eyes, Great General Bude crossed several meters in a single step and arrived in front of Chi Tong in the blink of an eye. His mighty fist smashed down. So fast. Akame's pupils constricted. After a moment of shock, she hurriedly took out her katana to block the attack. Bang bang bang. The result was just as Dustless had guessed. Chi Tong was forced to retreat repeatedly. In terms of swordsmanship, Scarlet Eye might be good, but in terms of strength, she was much weaker. She was sent flying by General Bude's punch, her face pale. The old guy's strength is not small. Dustless looked at General Bude in surprise. The taigu of this old guy was also an extremely top existence. It could control the powerful natural forces such as thunder and lightning. Not only was his speed strong, but also his strength. Scarlet Eye could not occupy any advantage. What a strong power. Feeling the overwhelming power of General Bude, Scarlet Eye, whose face changed slightly, said to herself cautiously. The eyes that usually looked at her own people as gentle as water were wise and bright at the moment, trying to capture the loopholes of General Bude. Maybe you can completely surpass me in a few years, but, as for now, General Bude slowly approached Scarlet Eye, seeing that she could still stand firm, he gave Scarlet Eye a look of appreciation. He used all his strength in the blow just now. Now I have the advantage of age after all, go to hell, young man. General Bude once again appeared behind Scarlet Eye in a flash. The exaggerated and abnormal speed of thunder and lightning was revealed. Scarlet Eye didn't even have time to react. The reaction speed of human beings was always fundamental to lightning. After all, not everyone had observation haki and many dojutsu like Dustless. Oh no. Noticing this sudden appearance of General Bude, Scarlet Eye secretly cursed. She turned her head to look. General Bude's strong and powerful fist had already smashed to her head. She would definitely die if she was hit directly. Wansho Tensei. At the critical moment, Dustless did not hesitate to stand up and disturb the situation. His right hand gently grabbed into the void. Scarlet Eye's body flew into Dustless's arms uncontrollably. Is this gravity? Squinting his eyes and carefully feeling the power that had not dissipated in the void, General Bude was quite surprised. His eyes could not help but follow the source. Among the 48 taigu, it seemed that there was no weapon that controlled gravity. Little old man Bud, you're already so old yet you're bullying a teenage girl. The word shameless is tailor-made for you. General Bude heard Dustless's harsh ridicule. He could not help but raise his eyebrows. After staring at Dustless for a while, he said in a very surprised tone, "You are really similar to the dead prince. You can simply pass off as the real one." "It's none of my business." Dustless heard the words and disdained. He was not interested in the so-called prince, but Scarlet Eye's eyes flashed with amazement. She looked at Dustless with her eyes full of brilliance. It seemed that she had thought of a good plan. "This kid is the Dustless that his death said? On the surface, he is indeed extraordinary, and his ability is quite strange. No wonder his death wants to join forces with me to deal with him." General Bude's eyes were fixed on Dustless's head. He could not help but nod with satisfaction. He could feel that Dustless was extraordinary just by looking at his face. Even if he knew his identity as a general, he was very calm. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.